incidents of my children or someone else's children by throwing them into a building with 600 kids and saying, we're going to hope for the best. Thank you.
I don't know how recent the document just came out with from the AA members or principals for the community, but I was curious to know if school districts are along with the state to lead those both teachers will.
My name is Adam Frizella, and I live on Hartford Brook Road. And I kind of agree with both the first two people that went up there, both for different reasons. I think everyone has their own idea of what makes them comfortable and safe, but I do think options would be great. Myself personally, I don't think remote learning worked at all for my daughter, and I would love her to be back in school, but I do agree that a hybrid model where some kids or families that don't feel comfortable with their children going to school can participate that way, and others can come back to school full time. And again, that might allow the numbers, depending on how everyone feels, that might be able to work, suffice for everybody. That was all I had to say. Thank you.
Can you just help them?
My name is Carl Eckberg. I live on Water Farm Road. I agree with the option for a family to choose to send their child to school or to teach them when they get home. It's my opinion that if we are going to bring kids into our school, we have to open it as we opened it last year. A school is part of the community. It's a place that they need to feel safe. It has to have a warm energy. They need to feel loved. The reason I'm here is because my son, Gustav, is 5 years old. He's going to be going to kindergarten this coming year. How can I tell my son, trust these people, leave the nest for the first time, go away, trust these people who care about your safety, get to know them, build a relationship. If my son can't even see his teacher's face, it doesn't make sense. If you're concerned, if you want to make your decision based off of fear, keep your kid home. But if you want your child to be able to grow up and learn in this great country, it's not a Deerfield, y'all. It's Deerfield. This isn't New York City. Let these kids come to a loving environment where obviously we care for their safety, but he can see his teacher's face. He can interact with his peers. As far as I know, the playground out back here is still closed. I don't know why. There are children. Thank you.
I'm here with both my children tonight. My name is Cassandra. I'm on Griffin Road. I have a student that is entering 8th grade. I also have a kindergartner that is require physical contact with a teacher. I am not a teacher. I'm also not an IEP teacher. My husband works about 100 hours a week. I work about 60. There is no way that I can be home for my children. I have grandparents that will be able to watch my kids, but they've been out of the school system for too long to be teaching the new curriculums that are out there for the children. I think that it is important for some of the older children to be ready to be able to educate for high school. I have concerns about him going to high school as it is, and not going to school this year is not an option for my children. They need to go to school and more or less be prepared for a high school that will happen next year. We already don't have a high school in town, and I feel that Deerfield does a great job going above and beyond getting kids ready for high school. I've been to the school my whole life. I was the first kindergarten class that came here, and they do a great job preparing the kids for the next level. But that cannot happen at an at-home stay model for my kids. There is no time to teach them, and there is no way I can bring them to work and provide them the tools that they need. Nor can they sit down and be frustrated over an 8-hour period to do about 2 hours worth of work. I don't know about you, but I think my dog had more screen time than my kindergartner. So I come here with a great stress. I really appreciate the second opinion about your children. Some children are set up for long learning, and they get it right off the bat. And that can be provided for the children, and it's a safer option for their parents. I applaud that. My children need some physical interaction. My children learn and have been told and how to focus off their peers. I've got one with a sensory issue, so again, he pays attention and focuses best when he sees what everybody else is doing around him. If we can somehow decide to open it, maybe with restrictions, I don't care if the cafeteria doesn't open. Or recess and physical modeling needs to be an option. Other towns in our district are doing it. I think it needs to be considered.
Here on Hopkintown Road. I have one student in middle school here. I also have a school bus in town. I would like to ask that you please consider, even though we're not technically your employees, our health does matter to the children going to school here. There are no bus drivers to get them. It's a little difficult to, we already have a school bus shortage. We're expecting teachers to wear masks, where the guidance says that parents are supposed to keep their kids home if they have a fever. There are a few parents in here not wearing masks. There's a sign at the door asking parents to wear masks. We all acknowledge that when we walked in through the door, and I don't know how, if we can't trust you to wear a mask, how do we trust you to send their kid to school healthy or keep them home when they're sick? Your child coming to school sick could affect my health and my children's health. There's a whole chain of events that could happen that could make my kids sick. We have health issues that put us at a higher risk in my family for complications, but because you say your kid is healthy, I'm supposed to trust that when you be trusted to walk through the door and acknowledge the sign on the door, wear a mask. I don't think it's in our best interest to return to school full time right now. I think it would be best to wait a few weeks, see how the schools are doing that are going back full time, or do remote learning in the meantime, which was not great. Wasn't great for my kid either. But we made the best of it, and we will continue to make the best of it. We'll make the best of whatever is decided, so that's what we do. But in my opinion, the kids should not be back full-time, 100% in this building right now.
Hi, my name is Nicole here, everyone's over. Can you
Nina Winfield, I live on Little Road. So I understand the hesitancy to send kids back to school. I understand the fear around COVID. I work with Dr. Fishbach as a nurse practitioner. I've taken care of patients with COVID since the beginning of this. My main concern is, I still go to work. I have been going to work since day one. I've been exposed to COVID at work. I can't even tell you how many times. I come home, I take care of my kids, I go to Hannaford and Raymond and shop, okay? We cannot isolate school as being the only place that apparently COVID is rampant. It is everywhere. It is in the supermarket, it is at the playgrounds, it is in schools, it is in hospitals, it is in, anywhere, the school buses. At what point do we decide as a community that it's enough? That we're still going to live our lives and we're going to send our kids to school? What is the end to this? Are we waiting for a vaccine? The stories I've heard out of government is that it could be next year. It could be next summer before we see a vaccine. I mean, we need to look at this as logically, as educated, as safe, but in real life. And keeping kids out of school for an extended period of time into the fall with no end game in sight doesn't seem rational to me. I mean, I go to work, I wear PPE. Do we have PPE for the teachers? Are we prepared? Are those the questions we should be asking? Is there enough space? Is there enough, supplies? There's no answers. I just have so many questions, but I feel like there's no answers. So that's all. I'm just asking for answers. Okay? Thanks.
Hi, my name is Becky Felder. I also live on Hartford Road, and I agree 100% with everything Nina said. I, as well, am a nurse. I have been working in the face of this pandemic since the beginning, minus a brief furlough. And again, interacting with where I work, we turn over about 100 patients a day. They're supposed to be well children who could be asymptomatic and COVID. What the guidance that we've received and followed from the CDC and the American Academy of Pediatrics has kept our staff, our patients, and their families safe. We're not afraid to show up to work every day because we have proper PPE, which is considered a surgical defense. N95s are not required unless you're doing an aerosol generating procedure. And my understanding with PPE supplies for the state is that there should be enough to provide them for the schools. So I just wanted to say, kind of in the same boat as Nina, we've been in this from day one, understanding the risks, and I think the children need to go back to school for their mental well-being. And when our family, remote learning was not ideal. I know the teachers put, a lot together in a short period of time, which we're very grateful for, but that method doesn't work well for a lot of children. My son, excuse me, I didn't mean to he told me every day that he wasn't learning anything new. He wasn't being introduced to material. He felt like he was just going through the motions to get things done. And I just feel like it's not a good way to challenge our kids and to push our kids to do better. So, I really don't think remote learning is where we should go this year, but I do agree that parents should have a choice whether they want to send their kids back full-time or if they're not comfortable with that, keep them home. But if remote learning is going to be a thing, one thing I would like to see is live instruction throughout the day instead of log into Zoom and do your math, log into typing cloud and practice your thinking. Our kids need more than that. Thank you.
First off, I want to start off by saying I feel for you guys because I'm sitting on your side of the table and I'm an administrator from Newtown Town. So I'm a little nervous speaking on this side of it. My family was here for 16 years. I've heard this is great town, I've heard this is great school system, and my husband are full education. So we moved here, she started kindergarten. Her first year here, the preschool she ended up going to a second preschool this year. That was her deal. She made some friends, she's a great kid. But my husband and I are close. He works for the same school district, teaching high school. And right now they're supposed to be going back remote. My school district, they're making the decision next week, but I'm an administrator. I work 261 days a year, 8 hours a day. So I've been going into my office for 2 months now, trying to get my dog. So if we go remote, I don't have any grandparents that are nearby to help me. My husband's going to be probably keeping remote for another school district, and I'm not going to be home. So it's just kind of like, I don't know what to do, and I just kind of needed a decision to be made so I can start planning my life and his life and her life, and try to start making the right decisions that we need to make for her path. I love Fairfield so much since we've been here. Everybody's been fantastic. And I don't know, I know you guys are in a tough decision. I'm kind of for the hybrid model, or, letting people choose, whether they want to move to their kids, or whether, they want to bring them into school. Thank you.
Any comments? Good. I was a dealership, and I'm essential. I've done essential this whole thing. We sell a product out of essential. You people, and I have all the things in the world, I believe you are essential. Everything I've seen going through this process, trying to make up, you guys do, lobbying what we do every day, it falls short. It's not working. Did the best we could, but it's not working. And it won't work this fall if we do hybrid or less. I think we should, if it's going well, I think we should, people who don't feel confident, definitely have the option to keep their kids home and work it out. But as a whole, I think we should be 100% return. I think our kids deserve it. I think they need it. I think there's a lot more minds people think about if they don't go back. And honestly, I don't know how you guys will even do the hybrid. I don't know how you're going to get enough staff to be able to do that and the home at the same time. Because you guys do the same features through the whole time, right? But they're also going to do a 50-50. How are you going to do that? You have to figure out how to hire that much more staff. How many can happen? Now, for me, if you send everyone back, and you do the best you can, and ask us, all the people who are essentially working, ask us our opinion, because I think that's what's in the outline of the NH guidelines, as far as the 54 pages for as far as paternity. They involve us, the community, on how to get kids back safe, how to help students safe. We don't have to do the commission to follow that, but I don't see it working out unless you commit to send people back, all kids back and then give people, parents, an option to keep their kids home if that's what they feel is best course of action for the safest thing for them. That's maybe not everyone feels that way, that's how I feel. You guys want to talk about safety? Before this, let's put COVID aside. Ever since my daughter was going to second grade, so since kindergarten, I trusted you, my wife has trusted you, with almost prized possession. Every day, any day out. Nothing was out of my daughter. So this is before all that, we trusted you guys. We still trust you. We look healthy. We figure it out. How much you walk in 50 times, figure it all out the whole time. Plexiglass, mask, whatever it is, that's what we do. We're healthy. It's just, to me, it's not an option.
My name is Ed Frost of the 1 Pond Road. I think there's two different situations or two different cares that I hear people talking about. We have to care for our children, we have to care for our workers. And I can understand some people might not want to send their kids to school, and they have that choice that they can make. But I also also understand as an essential employer that we were able to stay open, in essence, many of our customers are satisfied and very happy that we stayed open because we could service them. But we have the responsibility to protect our employees. And we can protect them. So the teachers can protect themselves. It's not a one or the other. They can protect themselves, we can protect our children. Some of us might choose to keep our children home as our own self-protection, and that's fine, we have the liberty to make that choice. But if the teachers choose to not come, that's a problem for us, for those who want the teachers, that need the teachers to be here. So as an essential worker, like the former gentleman, the previous gentleman spoke about, I think you're essential. I think there's ways to protect your essential employees. And I think that the science shows that the chances of our children being ill affected by it are very small. And if we look at the data and we look at the research that's starting to come out, that proves that. Now that doesn't mean that you're not going to get it as a vulnerable person within the employment facility, but there are things that you can do that I think the board needs to supply the schools or the teachers with the protection they need to protect themselves in case something happens. So I personally think we should be open, and I personally think that it should be every day that is allowed, because remote learning, the way that it had worked last year, was not very successful for a lot of people. And I would also say that if remote learning becomes an option, live classroom interaction is the only way that work can be successful as being at school. We have the privilege of having kids spread at 3 different schools, and we got the privilege of witnessing 3 different ways of them getting taught. And I can guarantee you one thing: the one school that did live instruction for every single class was by far a way better system for working with my son for learning than the struggles that we dealt with the not live teaching. So one way or the other, we need live instruction. I think it should be at the school. But I'm off, those are just my opinions.
Hi, I'm Kristen Cooney and I live on Pompey Road. I just want to make a list quickly of things that are needed to open school. Sanitizing, masks, more space, people next to PPE. We need new technology, new ideas, stopping spread, contact tracing, and substitutes. All of those things cost money. As you know, those are things in these school buildings that sometimes are hard to find, and people don't really want to give more or pay taxes or supply those things to make sure that the school is safe. I'm a teacher, not in the district, and I'm petrified that the funding isn't going to be there to keep me safe in a classroom that is full of students. And that's okay. I want to go back. I want to see my kids. I want to be in the classroom. I want them to see me. I want them to know that I care. But it is very scary to know that education is notoriously underfunded, now needs tons of new things to function. And how is that going to happen, and where is it going to come from? I have to also remember to keep in mind that there is no good solution. Everyone in this room disagrees on how to open the school. There is no right answer. There is no answer that's going to please everyone. And we are putting these people up to that decision, and that is hard. It is a hard decision. And no one is going to say, that works for everyone. Great job. So we need to be supportive of each other. We need to be in our small community and think about the things that is going to work for everyone, keep everyone the most safe, and make sure that everyone can feel like their solutions work. So just keep those things in mind. We are in a pandemic. This hasn't happened in the world in 100 years. There is no normal. We can't go back to normal. There is no new normal. And we have to remember those things. There's no good answer. There's no one answer at all.
Kevin Burrow and Karen Road as one of the state reps, I think they update from the state. A lot of people were publishing those on social media. We sort of tail off on that. Anybody wants a copy of the daily update, and I'd be more than happy to forward it. Talk about numbers, and so that's all I want. All I want to do is give you those current numbers. Looking at my operating, so it's not sending it to the field. In New Hampshire, there are currently 403 active cases of COVID-19. There are currently 21 hospitalizations for COVID-19. Since the pandemic, and these are quotes, began, there have been 6,500 positive test results in New Hampshire. There's been 690 hospitalizations total. And there have been 5,688 recoveries. The more disappointing part of the news is that we've lost 409 of our fellow states in this area. Those numbers, 403 active, 21 hospitalizations current, is about 1.3 billion people that live in New Hampshire. So that's the current active number. The graph of that. Deerfield has had 11 identified cases total, and there are currently no active cases of COVID-19 in Deerfield. And in fact, the majority of the towns directly above Deerfield also have currently 0 active cases identified. So that's just the numbers, here's what it is. I'm not going to argue or against any particular model. The last speaker hit it on the head. Like there's no way, there's no right answer. There's no way to do it. It's certainly a very difficult situation. But I just want to make sure that those current factual numbers, when you weigh what our options are and what the risk may be, not wearing a mask. An asshole again. I heard this today work in Manchester, work in a manufacturing facility with 400 employees. The only time they have to wear a mask is when they're not physically distant. I've been very careful tonight to physically distance, except for those that really want to come up and engage with me. And somebody else will politely put on a mask like conversation with me, no have to do that. So if I'm physically distant, I don't see the need. That's what we've been doing at work. We had cases where I work, yes, we've had small number of cases, nobody's gone to the hospital. So I don't even know what I know. That's been my experience. I certainly don't see anything hurt. I don't see anybody get sick. I want the kids to feel happy and healthy with everything else. Those are the numbers. So, good luck. I will make sure you use my very loud opposite side voice. So, everybody hear me now? Yeah.
Can you hear me now? Okay, so we're going to be passing the mics around. It will slow stuff down a little bit, but we will make sure to use them when we are talking. We're moving on to the rest of the meeting here. We have return to school planning as the next item. Principal Lilly, I believe you have a presentation for us. So if you would like to proceed with that, and then we can discuss afterwards.
Superintendent Sherman will start.
Okay. So first, okay. So first, I just want to say that nothing here surprised me about this community, and it's why I've worked here for 20 years, because you show up, you give your opinion, and not only that, you offer ideas and solutions, and for that, I'm very grateful, and I appreciate your time this evening. You're right, there is no right answer. I just wanted to recap a little bit how we got here, and to reassure you that all of us care about the safety of your children. That is always our number one priority, and it will continue to be. We started our work with the guidance from the state that we needed to reopen our schools. So we did look at all the documents. We did consider what experts had to say, and I appreciate very much some of the expertise that was shared this evening for those of you in the field. And we came up with a plan of a short-term goal. So our long-term goal, to be clear, I don't know how long-term, but our long-term goal is to have all the children in the school. We came to the decision that we were going to recommend to the school board a return to school with restrictions based on the recommendations of the 3 to 6 physical distancing, and take the time to have half capacity to teach the children what school looks like now. It's not going to be the same for them. I agree with you, it's really unfortunate that we can't just have them run off the bus and give them hugs like we typically would. Nobody's happy to be in this situation, but we're all trying to do our best and figure out what this is going to look like for the fall. So teams have been working. I can't thank the staff enough. They are not contracted this summer, but they are here, they are working, they are helping, and trying to do our best to come up with a good solution. So just to let you know, the goal for the hybrid for us was short term. And we want to teach the students how to come back, how to be safe, how to walk in a new pattern, how do we stay far enough away from their friends, and that was our goal. So just wanted to recap that for you.
I've got my own. All right, standing and giving a presentation while being masked is exhausting. This presentation has a little over 20 slides in it. I'll go as quickly as I can through some of them, but I just want you to walk away from this experience being as educated as possible in terms of what information is going into a possible decision for us moving forward. When the team met at school, and some of this I might repeat if you were at the last school board meeting, a presentation was done. Some of this information might be repetitive to you, but I think it's worth repeating as we process through after the meeting. And I was talking with Superintendent Sherman, and I said, I did say that, didn't I? I know I thought, but did I say that? So forgive me if you've heard this information before. But the process that we've gone through here at the school has not only been to me as SAU leadership, but also to have a planning team at school. The Superintendent Sherman is correct. As you can see in the back of the room, some of our DCS employees and staff members are here, sitting in the audience as well. And we greatly appreciate them being here. They've also been working with me during the summer to plan out what is this going to look like, how are we going to put a model in place that makes sense. It's not going to work for everyone. How can we mitigate as best possible? So we came out with 4 really important things to keep in mind as we're moving forward. Number 1 is to mitigate and make it as safe as possible. I don't think that I expressed that part of the sentence enough at the previous school board meeting. Our number 1 concern is safety not only for your children, but also for every single staff member and the entire community at large. We also want to
the best way to make this happen is to compartmentalize our children into families, or you've probably heard the word cohorts mentioned as, if you've read other procedures that are in place for other schools, the word cohort has been all over the news, it's in all of the guidance that we've been receiving. So as a grade level classroom, they would stick together with their teacher in their classroom. A lot of our teachers like to share kids, they like to share spaces. We have our 8th graders who like to be buddies to the youngers. We have our middle school in general. Unfortunately, that is not something we can happen because we have to stay together as a cohort in one room. So at the middle school level, the cohort would be their grade level, and at the elementary level, it would be their classroom. One thing that's really important to remember is that we really have to have flexibility to make this all happen. None of this can happen without trying to work through everything. I did not take Pandemic 101 as a principal. In my principal class meeting with Superintendent Sherman, this board certainly did not prepare for a pandemic. So all of this is new to us as well. And the most important of all is to accommodate and support each other. Everybody has a story. Everybody's story is very important, and your children are the most important things to us. And I mean things in the nicest way. To give you some background, June, we did a survey regarding remote learning. How did remote learning go for your child? And in addition to that, we also included information about the reopening of schools and what would you consider back in June after everything was said and done. We had about 165 responses to the June survey. The school board has been given further information. I only have a few slides up here to show you, but you can see that the grade levels have been represented from preschool through grade 8. The question about if you were given the option to return, what would work best for you was on there. So make sure I check my notes because I have a few notes on here. The first question was that at that time in June, if you supported coming back full-time without restrictions. That is the 45.5% of the circle at that time back in June. The hope was that we could all come back without restrictions. The next one was supporting reopening school with restrictions, with safety measures in place. And then that is the red, and then the orange is coming back in a hybrid. So you can see that as I go to the next slide, that information didn't change too much. Even when I did the second survey in July. And then there was a small percentage back in June that did not consider sending their children back. If you, in the survey information, if you hover over that, then it will show you the numbers that people that answered. And then July survey, as you can see, this is just the first of the 2 surveys. The first survey, we had 472 responses, well represented over every grade level from preschool through grade 8. And the second survey had 369 responses. Only these are just the grade levels for right now. But you can see that they're well represented over all grades. The July survey, the first survey put out said, keeping in mind we have to have 3 to 6 feet distancing. We could not obtain that with full attendance here at DCS. The first one was given the choice, would you want a hybrid model or would you want a remote model, or I'm not considering sending my child back. As I stated, we had 462 responses. The first line is that given the choice, I would choose the hybrid. The next one is remote. And the last one is I'm not going to send my child back to school. This is the transportation question. And it was fun watching these things grow as people answer them because I'm like, oh, no, yep, oh, no. It was like a horse race neck and neck. And as you can see, literally half the families will need transportation both morning and afternoon, and half of our families will need drop off and pick up. I don't know if you've ever been here during drop off and pick up. Average during a normal non-pandemic school year, approximately 70 to 80 cars. I have a couple staff members back there who can attest to their duties are at the end of the day. And it's a well-oiled machine for sure, but this situation is going to call for some different measures to be put in place. We appreciate the families that will bring their kids to school, but we probably will have to come up with a different system for pickup and for drop-off, because we will not be able to get buses in here, cars out back, so we've been in discussion about how we make that work. The July survey, number 2, would you want your child to come back full-time with restrictions? And as you can see, that there were points in this survey that it was literally 50-50. 50% of the people wanted their children back full-time, as do we, and 50% say that they will not send their child back. And most likely will not remote or to homeschool and do their thing. So as many of you stated when you stood up with the microphone, this is not going to be an easy transition. 50% of the people in this town will be very happy with our decision, and 50% will not be. And that's a horrible place to be, considering how many people we have to take care of. But we'll do it. We will make this decision, and we will make the best. We will make it the best. And I'm thinking that I might be able to sway a few people, so we can kind of be happier on the other end. Just to give you some numbers, in the green is our numbers of students per classroom. So if you look at our preschool averages about 10 to 12 both morning and afternoon, Mondays, Wednesdays, and Fridays is one group, and Tuesdays and Thursdays is another group, 10 each Monday, Wednesday, Friday group, morning, afternoon. So we have about 40 or so preschoolers. On average, our kindergarten is one class has 16, one class has 17, one class has 18, so between 16 and 18. We have 3 of every grade except for our second grade. We're going to have 4 second grades. But at 4 second grades, they have 15 kids in that class. When I did the survey, I took out my aggregated, is that the word we use, the data. I'm becoming a can't even say that word. Statistician on top of it all. But I took out how many families in each grade level are considering remote or not sending their child back. So as you can see those numbers there, the total numbers, and I did not go deeper down into which particular classroom they were in. And we get a little deeper into forming our plan. That is something that I will look at, because that might affect our opportunity to come, it will affect our opportunity to come back full-time, and it will also affect any kind of remote offering that we're able to give to families. Likewise, I did a staff survey, and I have 31 staff members who say if given the choice, they would want to teach remotely, or the choice was, would you like to teach, would you feel more comfortable teaching hybrid, remote, or there are situations preventing me from returning in the fall. So 31 staff members responded. I had over 90 responses. 31 said that they would choose, that if they had a choice, they would want to choose remote. And of our staff, we have approximately 4 who are considering not returning for very personal reasons. So that's where we stand with staff. Of the staff members who said that they would, that they would prefer remote. I don't know if you've ever met any staff members here at DCS, but they're the most professional staff, teachers and staff that I've ever had the pleasure of working with. And I know there will be some people that will choose to stay remote, and we will try to accommodate and to work with them. Some people might have to take an FMLA if they really don't feel like they can return. There's other options that we will have to look at. But those are the numbers, just to give you an idea of how deep this decision really is. I have some really smart math people and an architect on staff, so they broke down the size of the classroom, the standard classroom. They did that math. I don't know how, I think they did like square feet and how far kids need to be. They really are smart about this, but pretty much what they concluded, sorry, we can't read the summary there, but the basics are there. There's approximately 408 square feet of usable space in a classroom. If you consider we have 3 feet on the sides and 4 feet up front for a teacher to stand or be. The staff member has the staff members have looked at this. They look at the furniture. I mean, you know what a classroom is like. There's desks and teachers' desks and bookcases and libraries and carpets and whiteboard. It's everything, right? So if we look at the furniture and took into consideration some sort of border around the room, we can fit approximately 14 student workspaces in a 3 foot by 3 foot area. For their chair, their desk, their belongings. So keeping that in mind, remember we also have over 100 staff that we're getting back in this building, on top of 540-ish students. We also have to account for the bathroom, the back fire door. I don't do this math, so I went upstairs and took pictures. I set up one of the classrooms upstairs. This is a 3rd grade classroom. I've laid out the desks in this particular classroom. The desks are 6 feet apart. I can fit 4 desks across the front, and you can see by across the front, we're literally talking all the way up to the whiteboard. And I can fit 4 desks going back. I'm sorry, 4 desks across and 3 desks going back. And that's pushing all the other furniture up against the wall. So I show these pictures to you because in a couple of our slides, we're going to start talking about what we need to prepare kids to come back to school, and this is one of the things we're going to have to prepare them for. When I walked into this classroom, all the desks were in groups of 4, and I texted the teacher after I moved because you beg for forgiveness, right? And I said, I promise I'll put it back, but I had to take part of your keyboard desks that you have also because I had to separate them out. I also went into a middle school classroom and spaced out these desks 3 feet. 4 desks can go across, 4 desks can go back. There are some moving areas, like I could put another desk in the back corner over there, or sometimes if you grew up in my day and age, the naughty boy sat. Probably Mr. Illinois, definitely Mr. Kelly. So in our middle school classroom, we can fit about 14 to 16 desks. I also went into one of the science classrooms just to use their tables as a kind of a gauge for what classrooms, because there's several classrooms in this building that do have tables. Our science classrooms have them, and our lower grades and our lower grades do. The tables are all different sizes and shapes in this building. So one of the things we might have to do is start collecting desks from other classrooms. Might have extra desks. We might have to pull out tables, but these particular tables are 4.5 feet long, so we would have to put a kid not even in the middle. We'd have to put them on the end of the table. Then you got your 4.5 feet, then you got 2 little squares, and then you got another table. So they would have to be, all spaced out like that. So our ultimate goal, as Superintendent Sherman said, is for a full return to Deerfield Community School. We all want our kids back. There is not a single parent, guardian, teacher, paraprofessional, kitchen worker, IA teacher, I'm going to forget somebody, custodian. bus drivers. There's not a single soul that doesn't want to have those students back in this building in our site so that we can see them and we can be with them. We do have to reevaluate to be able to move to full remote. Full back, sorry. I think I typed full in there, I'm so still in my brain. To move for a full return, we are, as you know, following federal, state, and local guidelines and guidance. There's a lot to consider for a final. We also have to consider the final numbers for remote learning and our parents and guardians who said, I will not, my children will not return to their fields at this time. I will tell you that although some parents say, yeah, I'm going to do remote, we just got a packet the other day about a parent that had changed their mind and they were registering their child. So our minds can change over the course of time. So even if we have 100 plus parents who are saying, yes, I want remote, we have to first figure out how we're going to accommodate that. But also we have to get some sort of confirmation that in fact they won't. If that happens, then we're looking at a smaller number of students returning to this building, which will help with the full opening. We also have to keep in mind that even with the full reopening and a full bringing back the students, we have to mitigate and make it as safe as possible. That means that social distancing will still be in place, mask wearing, PPE requirements, hand sanitation, all of those things that we are putting into place will have to continue. What we do know is that in order to safely reopen our schools, the social and emotional needs of our students is very important. That came out again and again and again in all of the research and all of the information that was given to us after this March period of time, March to June, is that kids are falling apart, they're depressed, they're stressed. I know I've heard it all. I have my own kids. My daughter's a teacher herself, but my son, who's in high school, watching this happen is heartbreaking for our kids. There's no doubt about it. There's a level of importance to that face-to-face instruction for our kids, and that importance of social interaction and all the things we are keeping in mind as we're making this decision to come back full. We want to continue to limit exposure, so keeping our kids in the cohort model. We need to decrease the burden on transportation. I don't know if you've done any reading about transportation, but they're saying 14 kids on a bus. 28 if they're siblings and they can sit them together. But that's even with 200 plus people who are going to drop their kids off for us. That's still about 30 kids on a bus that we have to get here to the school. We have to have a seat for them, we have to have a seat for them on the bus, and we have to have a seat for them here at school. We also have these awesome outdoor classrooms going on. I don't know if you've heard in the news around town, but there's several teachers, several community members who have been actively involved in developing a prototype for an outdoor classroom. So I know that we'll talk about that a little bit more, and there's an update on that process, hopefully at some point this evening. What we do know is that we have to keep staff and students 3 to 6 feet physically distanced. What we do know is that the classroom arrangements have to be made so that we can accommodate this physical distancing. And what we know is that school is going to look real different for kids. And we're going to do the best job we can to make that work for them. And we all know the kids are super resilient. And they will come into this school and they will be welcomed warmly every single day. Even if I can't hug them, they will know that they are loved for sure when they're walking through the door. We also know that it's been almost 6 months. 6 months since they've been in this building, 6 months since the teachers have been in this building. So we need to get them back, and we know that. I don't think that's a SpongeBob reference for anybody out there who, maybe 6 months we would go. All right, so what's our normal now? there's a lot of, somebody spoke at the last school board meeting about the new normal, and yeah, it is a new normal, but this is our normal now. What do we know about our normal now? We know that bus transportation is going to be very different, so we have to prepare our kids for that. We know that morning arrival will be different. We've been processing through how we're going to do that in this building. If you've ever been here in the morning, you know the buses pull up and the kids come streaming in through those doors to many welcoming staff members as they go down the hallways and up to their classrooms where they get their breakfast. So that is going to have to look very different. We are going to have to open all entrances for students to come in this building. We are still processing through whether we will be doing temperature checks at the door or we will ask parents to do that at home or how that's going to work. So there's still a lot of things that we're processing through, but they are things that we are making sure that are going to be in place for when kids come back to the building to keep them safe. And dismissal will also look very different here. We will not be calling all kids down in little buses. It's going to have a different look. Breakfast is something that we're still working through. Our kitchen, our wonderful kitchen staff is already working on finding things to be packed to go. I know she likes to have several offerings. She knows that she's going to have to limit those. We're still talking about whether kids are going to come down and visit the business in the hallway and pick up their breakfast, or that's going to be delivered in the classrooms. The bathrooms will have to look different. Our lower grades have our lower floor rather. First floor has bathrooms in the classroom, but our uppers don't. They have the gang bathrooms, so that's going to look very different. Students will not be using lockers. That is a universal decision that was made with the planning team, that we really felt like kids need to just keep their stuff in their backpacks. Lockers can be a huge congregation of kids. Hallways will have to look very different. So these are all the things that we are going to need to take time the first couple of weeks of school to train the kids and show them the proper way of doing it so that we can keep them in this building and we can keep everybody safe. Walking down the hallways will look very different. I'm sure you've seen the videos. Kindergartners walking 6 feet apart, and like an hour later, finally the last kid comes around the corner. Students and staff will be wearing masks. They can be disposable masks. We have been storing them from the PPE through the Department of Health and Human Services has been getting out and getting out the supplies, and they've been storing masks and face shields and gowns and thermal temperature takers and everything. Every time I can sign up for more stuff I do. So we have that. That was along with the PPE, and the nurses want to need some things in her office as well. With this, we'll talk about the proper hand washing and ensuring trained your children well. I think we're probably raising a lot of kids who are going to be OCD about their hand washing. Disinfecting is going to look very different. The cleaning of this building is going to look different for our custodians. We have electrostatic disinfectant sprayers that we've ordered. We have a different schedule for our custodians that we're going to put in place. Our custodians are going to have to go around during lunchtime and collect lunches from the class, garbage from the classroom, which we'll talk about in a minute. Temperature checks are nurses are suggesting, and we'll just keep wanting to have a final answer, but that's something that is still being discussed. School supplies will look very different. There's not going to be the bucket of markers and pencils and erasers and doodads and gadgets in the middle of the tables anymore. Kids are going to have their own personal school supplies. There's going to be no sharing of that. That includes math manipulatives and writing folders, and think about all the things the teachers have in their classroom, and those supplies are going to be held right at their desk, in their desk areas. IA teachers, we're still in the process of talking about how IAs will happen. We're leaning towards IAs will go on carts and will go into the classrooms instead of having kids travel in hallways to go up or to the classroom. With the exception of PE will be held outside. Lunch and recess will look very different for our kids. Lunch will happen in the classroom, and recess will be with their cohort only. There will be sections of the playroom we will play on. We will rotate every single, the laptop, the equipment, and the backfield, and we will rotate that every single day, so that the next day the kids on the laptop can go to another playground. But they will have to stay together with their cohort. And these are all things that will be very different for our students that are coming back. This is all stuff that we have to help them understand and train them. And again, I'll say kids are resilient and they'll figure it out and we'll all make it work. But I'm getting you some information that perhaps you have thought of and perhaps you haven't. And there's probably even more that I'm not thinking of than maybe you are. So if we go into a hybrid model to start off the school year, we're looking at a couple of different options. Then we're looking at a reevaluation of the hybrid model after 2 weeks. So this is not forever. That's been the mantra. There's 2 mantras in my family right now at the dinner table. This is not forever, and we're all trying our best. I can't even tell you how many times I've had to say at the dinner table when my family is falling apart. So we're looking at a hybrid model with AABB. I have talked to the planning team, which, like I said earlier, has all grade levels covered, all parts of the building. Look, there's somebody from every part of our building on this particular planning team. So in an AABB model, we would have our students come to school. The classes will be divided into an A cohort and a B cohort, every grade level from preschool to 8th grade. And we've actually, I'm going to take preschool out of this for right now because I'm not sure how the hybrid model will work for preschool, so that's still something we're thinking about. But if we did kindergarten through 8th grade, every grade would be divided into either an A cohort or B cohort. I talked about this the last time, but to go into a little further detail, we would have to take a look at the class lists. Some schools are able to do it alphabetically, A through L. But in our building, that won't work. So I can't say if you're A through L, you're going to be in A cohort. Because we have, in some classrooms, A through L is 18 kids, and L and through whatever Z is, that's been the alphabet, right, is 2 kids. So if that's breaking up that alphabet, that way won't work. So we would have to sit down and take a look at the cohorts. There's also been some talk about keeping students with IEPs and students with intervention services, thinking about grouping them into certain cohorts because they'll work well together. So if we have 2 students in the classroom and they're supposed to be working together, we might need to put them in the same cohort regardless of what their alphabet letter falls. So these are all things that we're talking about in terms of creating a cohort. And so on Mondays and Tuesdays, the group A would come and group B would be doing remote learning from home that would be provided by the teacher. And on Wednesdays, the hope is that everybody is doing remote learning, and then we're able to disinfect and clean the building. Although that will be happening every day. I'll repeat that in a minute if you go back, but that will be happening every day. And then on Thursdays and Fridays, B will come to school and A will be home with their doing remote learning. I did, like I said, I mentioned this to the planning team, and 100% of the planning team did not like this model. I'm very sorry. I know there's people who like this model. There was a lot of talk about this model in particular. They felt that there were several instructional implications to this model. There's instructional implications for all of it, don't get me wrong. But if we had the same kids here on Mondays and Tuesdays, then we would send them home for 3 days. There would be no further instruction for them. As you know, kids have had a lot of aggression, and in a normal non-pandemic world, we have kids that go home on the weekend and come back and have aggression. So that's that's one of the big things that we are been talking about, how would that work, and would we have to do a lot of reteaching when they came back, things that we already had given to them. Also, we won't see some kids there'll be 5 days in between seeing kids, so that was a little bit of a drawback. And we restrict our flex day, which I'll show you in the next model. We have a different idea for flex day. And deep cleaning is happening every single day after school and throughout the course of the day, not just on Wednesdays or the end of the week. So another cohort, hybrid model that we're looking at is ABAB. I know that there are a couple of schools in our district that are going towards a hybrid model to start their year off as well. And they're also going to be reevaluating after a couple of weeks to see if they can go back full-time. The ABAB model would be students, Group A would be in the building on Monday for in-school instruction, and Group B would be home remotely. And then on Tuesday, Group B would come into the building, and Group A would go home and either their packet of work that their teacher has provided for them, or, especially in our upper grades, assignments on Google Classroom or another platform that we choose to use. The state of New Hampshire is looking into Canvas, as that was one big thing that came out of the DOE survey, was that there was too many platforms for parents to have to navigate through. So we are looking into that particular, we have our IT people looking at that models that in that platform. So we do an A on Monday, B on Tuesday, A on Wednesday, B on Thursday, and then have a flex day or one learning day on Friday. We're still working through some of the details of this, but the hope is that we can provide a synchronous schedule for all of our students. So the teacher would have a schedule for their student to log on in the morning, have a morning meeting, have a lesson, get off, do some work around that lesson, get back on for another time, so it will be throughout the course of the day. The thought is also that we could potentially pivot if we had to continue the hybrid model after 2 weeks of reevaluating, we had to continue for another 2 weeks, and we could potentially pivot that flex day to a bonus day, so that instead of having A flex day, it would be A would come, and the following week B could come. So that's just one thing we're talking about as another option, instead of having a flex day, have in-school instruction. Also, the hope is perhaps in that particular if we have a flex day like that we can have students who need one-on-one services come in. We can have intervention services available for students to be able to come to school on a flex day for a period of time for further instruction, in-person instruction. And then again, the ABA with Wednesdays, the flex day is another option that we could take a look at. Again, this is for a 2-week period of time to start off our school year, so we can get kids back in this building, we can get them into the new practices that have to be put in place, and then we evaluate after 2 weeks, and make the decision to either come back full or continue hybrid, or God forbid have to pivot to remote. I don't mean that in the only way I mean. So a cohort like this, we will see kids every other day. They will be receiving instruction at school, and then if you lose your remote day, you'll be working on assignments at home. Again, like I said, it will be a packet that a teacher sends home to you, or assignments on Google Classroom or another platform. There will be some accountability for work completion. That was our biggest struggle. I know, I'm speaking to the choir on that. But the work completion was our biggest challenge for sure. Besides not being able to see the kids every day. Our remote learning or our flex day will be synchronous, like I said, with a schedule for kids to follow. Again, potential for in-person instruction. And also, we could potentially pivot that day to be a bonus day instead of a flex day or a remote learning day. So some kids would end up having a remote learning, but then the following week they would have an extra school day. So, if we're reevaluating this in 2 weeks, we are making sure that we can still continue to mitigate and keep kids safe, keep staff safe, keep social distancing. We were making sure that we could, after 2 weeks of reevaluating this, come back full-time or continue on with another 2 weeks of hybrid learning if we have to. Okay. I know you're sad to hear this, but this is the last slide. So there's lots of next steps, as you can imagine, even though we have taken several steps, there are still lots of next steps that we have to take. We have to continue to reevaluate, always reevaluating, following state, local, and federal guidelines and guidance, looking at the data. We have started a detailed plan and a handbook that we are going to finish up that has details of all of this information that I talked about and probably more. But it would outline what happens if somebody does get sick in this building, what are we going to do? What are the procedures that we need to have in place? All of the questions that you probably are thinking about, we are going to be putting into this handbook. Our staff needs some professional development around all of this. This is, for some of them, the first time that they've heard me talk about this. I have been very cautious to give any more information than I have to because the stress level of the staff is already through the roof, just as it is for me. I don't want to give them too much information without having answers. My favorite answer this entire time is, I don't know. I don't know. That's so many times I just don't know the answer. We also need to notify families of what we're deciding to do. And we have to take a look at our cohort groups and establish those. So if we start off for the first 2 weeks in a hybrid, you would need to know what cohort you will in A or B. Also, just a quick sidebar on the cohort. The last school board meeting when I did the presentation, we did talk about there would be individual basis considerations if there was a particular student, say, you also were in a situation where you had to have your kid in school on Mondays and Wednesdays. We would work with people on that and be as accommodating as we possibly could be. We also need to work on a remote learning plan. It's been very clear this evening and through the course of the week that people are looking for some sort of choice. Some families are 50% of the families are feeling like they don't want to send their kids back, and 50% of the families are saying, let's get back to school. So, with that in mind, we need to have some sort of remote learning plan in place. The district is looking into different options, VLABs being one of them. And they just recently rolled out for K through 4. But in addition to that, I do have staff members that would like to, if given the choice, would like to work remotely. Unfortunately, that could work K through 5, but at the middle school level, it would be very challenging because it's such specialized instruction at the middle school. So that's something we really have to look at. This school has lots of things that we need to consider and put in place. And also, if given an option for remote, there's not one decision that is made does not have a trickle down effect. So say I have a first grade teacher that wants to teach remote, and I can put that teacher in charge of the first graders that need to have remote. That means that the other part of her class has to be divided into the other first grade teachers. Not one decision will not have some other sort of trickle down effect. Trickle down effect is the trickle. There's a lot to consider for preschool. We've been in conversations with our preschool teachers, and that is something that we are still in discussion about, and I bring it up tonight because the board will weigh in on that decision. The board is very supportive of preschool in this building and for this town, and we need to be very respectful of that, and we know that. Plus, it keeps babies in the whole wide world. Second that to K, first, second, third, fourth, fifth, sixth, and 8th graders. There's a lot to consider for the nurse. A lot. For example, she has her little office with one bed. What if a kid or a staff member comes in sick? Where are they going to go? So there's been discussions of me getting my office up and moving in the district or leave, because I put my desk in there, just in case. So there's that. There's all kind of, like I said, not one decision is made without something else another decision having to be made and put in place. So there's a lot to consider for the nurse. And those are all things that we are working on putting in place in our handbook, as well as talking her through. She's been in touch with nurses across the district and nurses across the state of New Hampshire. So she, and I get a mile-long feedback every time she has a Zoom, a mile-long. Transportation and meals. As we have our fine bus driver here representing tonight, transportation is going to look very different. Bus drivers are going to have masks. Some of them might have shields, I don't know. Disinfecting between kids getting on and kids getting off. Kids will have to have masks on bus. So we have to figure out the transportation piece. We have to have people either commit, you're either dropping off or you're taking the bus. That has to be determined for sure, as well as meals. Especially for our kids who might need a meal when they go home, if they have a remote learning day, they might need a lunch. So we're working on things like that. Teachers are trying to figure out two things. I am trying to figure out the planning team the best approach to giving this information to teachers. So I have to set up some teacher meetings and talk them through this and listen to their questions and their concerns as well. And lastly, we are looking at open house alternatives. I know that some people are looking at, some people are doing Zooms, there's all kinds of big multi-classrooms being set up. I don't know if you see those circulating through Facebook or just thinking that has all my teacher friends on it. So there's all these things are things that we are working on and continue to work on, and even more. I just couldn't fit it into one, and my slide would look awful if I had to put more on there, but there is way more to consider and a lot of questions to answer. So turn it over to the board. Questions? Comments? I need a drink. And I need a water.
First off, I want to thank you for taking the time to put all that information together. I think you've got a lot on your plate these last few months, and it is appreciated the efforts that you put forward to try to help navigate a solution to all this. So thank you very much, Chairman, as well. I'm going to open it up here for board members if there's questions. Let's go ahead and start kind of working through this.
I don't have any questions per se, but I do want to, at the conclusion of this, provide more clarity to the community. I like the plan. It's a lot more clear what the intentions are as opposed to last week's meeting. But there's the phrase you keep going back to, the reevaluation of conditions. I think what we need to provide to the community is the criteria under which that reevaluation is going to be judged. For example, if we're at where we are at right now, with that reevaluation means that we go to a full in-person model. And I know there's a million other variables to take into consideration, but all things considered, if the kids are back for 2 weeks, we've taught them how to behave in school, and our metrics are where they're at. Is that the criteria that we're going to be judging on?
Do you want an answer for that? I don't know. and there's a lot that goes into that. And I think there's a couple of things we need to make sure that our numbers have worked themselves out in terms of students that are committing to remote learning or not returning to school. We have to offer free and public education to every single student in this district. And if I have a kid who says, or a family that says, I'm doing remote, and then 2 weeks later they say, oh, never mind, we're all set with this, we're coming back, I have to have a chair for them in this building. And so those are all things that have to be considered. And so if they're going to be something that the board is saying we have to commit to, if you're going to do remote, then you commit for the trimester, for the semester, Susie finds out that Josie is back in school, and now Susie wants to come back to school. These things are going to happen. Kids are kids, and so, that's something to consider. The data in town, I'm very aware that Deerfield currently has had 11 cases and it has 0. New Hampshire's numbers are fairly low, and I want to keep it that way. But if we start to see an uptick, that makes a difference. So these are, and again, following the guidance from the state and other things. So we can turn around if you have something to add to that.
We've talked a lot about that as MSAU, and I think some of it will depend on our communities. We're pretty spread apart in our 5 towns, but we've talked about, what does it mean when we pull back? What if one child is sick, right? What's the ramification of that? Are we saying one is enough? One is, we're done, we're shutting down? Or are we saying, okay, if there's one student sick, let's send that classroom home and quarantine the rest of the students for a couple of weeks? That one classroom, like you said, has a trickle-down effect to everything else in the schedules in the building. So those are really important pieces of information that we need to sort out and decide before we can have a plan to come back. And it's really, some of it is community dependent. So we don't have any hard and fast lines in the sand right now, and I think that's something that we have to talk about and everyone has to decide for themselves.
I think it's important also for the community to know that we've been instructed that we don't make the decision whether a school shuts down or moves back into a cohort, gets sent home. Department of Health and Human Services makes that decision. They are involved if we do have an active case, they are involved from the very beginning. Contact tracing and everything, every decision is handed over to them. So I just want the community to know that.
So one of the slides that you had on your presentation showed, I think, the number of students that were expected to be in each classroom based on some of the survey data. Is that an accurate summary of what some of those slides showed? Yeah, it does. And so based on the distancing recommendations, we're thinking that about 14 can be in each class. So I guess I think I already know the answer to this because it seems pretty obvious, but based on the survey results and what we know today, there's no way to have, school 5 days that want to be on site, and then for those that want to be remote candidate, is there no way that we can accommodate that? Obviously based on our class size today.
Right, and we have to take a look at people who, if they said we want remote and they are committing to remote and we have a plan in place for them to be able to do remote and they want to do that plan, then we could take a look at our numbers again. It's not evenly spread, 4 kids from this class, 4 kids from that, does not work out nicely. It's like 8 kids from this class and 1 kid from that class. It's not going to be evenly spread out. So it's another trickle-down effect. So then we start dividing up the classrooms, the kids already know who their teachers are. So then we say, oh, sorry. That's another thing that we would have to look into.
So it seems to me like if we can start compartmentalizing some of these decisions, it may help us kind of progress through things. So maybe this is the right order of that. Can I make a motion? I'm not going to stop it. All right. So I'm going to move that we ask DCS to go ahead with a hybrid model. The exact details to be worked out later. I think 2 points I can come back to that. And my motion my motion is to ask DCS to move forward with studying and proposing a hybrid model for us for the fall. Do we have a second on that? seeing none, we're gonna hold off on that for a minute. Let me maybe complete the path I was going down. So we're hearing from a lot of people that they want to have, there's a significant number of people that seem to be interested in having a virtual option, or remote option, I guess is the way to put it. And so I think the first thing we need to identify is, A, is there a consensus of the board that we're interested in bringing students back in the building in one form or another? And then the second part would be, is the board looking to also provide a virtual model as well for the students that are not comfortable coming back in the building? So I think to help compartmentalize and then be able to put one item over here, one item over here, so we start kind of breaking things down how we want to handle things. This is the intent of this board to make sure that we provide a remote option to the families that want a remote option. And how that looks can be discussed secondarily. So that's, I guess, the first question we have to have.
Yes. I'd like to make a motion that DCS returns to school on August 26th. Students return to school August 26th, with 2 weeks of hybrid learning, with full in-person learning resuming for those families who want it, with the option for those who are not comfortable sending their students back to school to continue remote learning. This would be contingent upon the board's evaluation of the existing current data.
You have a second for that motion?
Can you just repeat that? So students go back on 26th, for 2 weeks we get remote.
No, 2 weeks hybrid. Well, they learn how to navigate through the school. And then full in-person learning resuming 2 weeks after that. With the option for parents who want to keep their kids remote learning.
You have a second. So, we have, Gigi, go ahead.
I think I'm unclear about what people are asking, when they're asking for remote learning. Like, I think I might be unclear what that means. So, does remote learning, does that mean, so every grade level has an option of learning remotely? Okay, so that's what it means. Yeah. Correct. So every grade level has an option. So then my next question is, what is the feasibility? Right, so then I go back to this one. What is the feasibility of creating that scenario? It's one thing if we are a district that is multiple schools, multiple districts, but in the size of the law, if the goal is to get everything, the many people back into the building safely as soon as we can we split the staff to make that happen?
It's something we have to look further into. The remote piece is not something that is an easy answer. We are, as an SAU, looking at offering VLAX for families that want to do remote. And if we take a look at our staff and get a final answer on returning, we might be able to take a look at that. But like I said, that will have a major trickle-down effect. That will not be something that I can just say, oh yeah, you're going to do the first grade remotely, and it's something we really have to take a look at. But VLAX is an option for sure. They've already been promoting VLAX. The New Hampshire guidance has VLAX as their option for remote. So.
Thank you.
So I guess my previous point was that I feel like the bigger decision, before we get to that level of detail, I feel like the first decision is going to be, we presented what the administration was tasked by the state with coming up with 3 discrete routes, sort of in broad categories. One would be remote route, which would be 100% remote, which is what spring was. There's the hybrid, some sort of combination, where some students are in the building some of the week, and other students are not in the building some of the week. I think the details, my previous motion would get at first deciding this first decision, and then moving towards what those details look like, and who and which and what teachers and how that breaks down. The third option would be a full opening of the school. And I feel like my previous motion was to try and get at which one of those routes should be asked of the administration to start pursuing. And then we can break down the details further with another round of some sort of. What's your question?
I think so. Yes.
So, I most certainly, I for one support it. I think we need to start regardless with students in the building in some sort of hybrid fashion. And I think we need to put a 2 to 3 week window on it to make sure we get everything running the way we need it to run. It gives additional opportunity to kind of continue to see if trends anywhere else change. If they hold fast here, if the schools that went forward right out of the gate saw anything negative or not, and give us the ability to really start working with it. But I also think I do support kind of where Jeff is going, but I think for a slightly longer duration, just I think 2 weeks is a fairly short window for hybrid. I think if we want to do, like a 3 week period or a 4 week period, somewhere around there, but I'm also wanting to give some clarity to when the intended end of that is going to be. And it doesn't mean it can't change, it doesn't mean we can't work with it, but in my mind, I want to see some sort of evidence that we need to continue it rather than have to find evidence that we shouldn't continue. So that's one thought, right? And the second thought is, I think it seems like some of us support having a remote option for the families that opt to have it. And I do not know what that's going to look like right now, but I most certainly know that I think we need to have it. And whether it's through VLAX or whether they're able to support it on our own, I think is a discussion that needs to occur after we start making some decisions. Nate, go ahead.
I feel like that version could also fall under the umbrella of hybrid, where to me the word hybrid means that some students are in the building and some students are remote. I think how we break it up still remains to be seen. I feel like I agree with that idea, but I still think it's called hybrid. It's just maybe not exactly what it's here, maybe we're not looking at it. But I would still say it's called hybrid.
So I would say in an effort to start providing some clarity, I'll make a motion that the Deerfield School District provide remote learning options for the first half at minimum of the 2020-2021 school year to the families that are not comfortable sending their kids back into DCS. No, that was a motion that the Deerfield School District provide a remote option for families for the first half of the 2020-21 school year for the families that are not comfortable sending their kids here. What it will look like is to be determined shortly. So that's the motion. Second first, and then we can. Okay, so it's been moved and seconded. Now we can discuss it. Try to get some more. So I'll open it up for discussion.
I would ask Patty if you need that motion to be less an option. As is, do we need to approve that?
VLAX is an option. Always.
Yeah, so.
Does VLAX, if a student, let's say, is signing up for 8th grade, and they take 8th grade and take VLAX, does that result in money from our district moving to VLAX rather than being used by our district? Does that affect our bottom line?
if this parent unenrolls their child for DCS, then yes, that affects our advocacy. We can do any type of hybrid, keep them enrolled in DCS, do part VLAX, part something else with VLAX. When they're enrolled in DCS, gives us lots of flexibility. We can, this is all, again, contingent upon the staffing levels, but, you could even offer to stay connected to those students through VLAX, offer them some academic support for the classes they're taking at VLAX. So there's lots of options that VLAX has opened up for us as school districts.
And to the extent of the motion, it wasn't, the remote option isn't required to be utilized to the extent of that motion. The remote option at this point is, but the motion is, are we going to commit to providing a remote option for the students? Clear that off the table, and then circle back to it and figure out how we're going to execute on it after we start making some of the higher level decisions.
I think that, yeah, you have to be careful with the wording, because DLAX is out there, but we're not providing it. So it would not be us providing DLAX, it's just there for the students to go with that. So I don't know exactly how to word it, but if we say we're providing a remote option, then that actually means that we would actually be creating a remote option with our staff to provide remote instruction. So that's all I'm not trying to keep you. I'm just saying that VLAX is a separate charter school. And so we're not providing.
Do you want to clarify your motion of providing staffing? Like, are we actually providing, putting people out there, part of our staff really dedicated to providing a remote program?
That I would, and that's when I go with action, the feasibility of that.
So, in my mind, the feasibility is what we're going to focus on after we start breaking down a couple of decisions on how to execute necessarily. It is going to be tricky by some additional information. So, in my mind, we're going to make some decisions and kind of try to set a course in motion on a couple of different paths. And we need to then go back and say, okay, we really need an understanding of families' participation, whether it's in the building or out of the building. And if we have a more clear breakdown of what our intentions are, then it'll be a lot easier for us to get a realistic count from the families involved. Yes, my kids will be coming, no, my kids will not. That allows us to start isolating head counts a little bit better inside the building, which allows us to start drilling down a little bit deeper in certain things. And so my hope would be is that if we can get some decisions in focus, we can try to get some data for next week's meeting and try to drill down on how we execute certain things, whether it's next week or the next couple of weeks. Anybody?
I defer.
I was just going to ask if you would be comfortable with your motion adding something like when feasible or when possible, because the motion as it stands says we will offer a remote option, and I feel like that's making a promise we don't know yet if we can keep.
I would be fine. So I would amend my motion to include when possible. Unfortunately, did not write it down, but.
So, motion that the Deerfield School District will provide remote options for families not returning for the first half of the 2021 school year. That's part of
When possible. Did you go ahead?
I was wondering if we can take the vote and separate that out. So when we take a vote on that we're going to do a hybrid model that will be evaluated and evaluated and with the goal of going to try to get everybody back in the building, separate that out, and then make a separate motion on the local learning. So that we're not sticking them together.
Basically what.
So I mean, basically the current motion is, are we going to support, it's effectively, are we going to support remote learning? That's the motion on the table. And then next, I would say we start tackling, so that's the out-of-school experience for those students that are going to be learning remotely, at least committing to try to provide that option. And then after that, I think, start working on the bigger question, the question that's going to involve a lot more conversation, I believe, is what does in-person look like? Is it hybrid, is it full-time, is it AA, BB, BB, AA, what, I mean, it could be 1,000 different things, but I'm trying to put it somewhere, park it momentarily, and start trying to isolate things. We can always circle back and amend things, but it's an effort, I think, more to get the ball rolling, for lack of a better term.
I think the way that your motion reads is that it's kind of like a alternate choice. And so it sounds to me like school would be planned here on grounds with the goal to get everyone back in, which is great. But if a parent chooses to not bring their kids in, it's kind of like an afterthought, and we'll sort of figure out something if it works, if it's feasible. But it's not a priority, I guess, is the way that I'm interpreting the motion. And so, to me, what you're saying is the definition of hybrid. What to me hybrid says is part in school, part at home, and how we can still work that out. But I feel like we should go into this year deliberately planning, a at-home option that is planned and that is prepared for, that has dedicated teachers. And I don't want to plan that, I want to leave that to the administration, how that works. But I don't want parents to be effectively penalized by sort of being an afterthought and saying, well, go take relax or go do something. When it's not an option, it's on you because we sort of can't handle it. So, and I feel like that's the reading of your motion that I carried. So I'm not sure that they were class.
I don't see that reading at all. I see it as we have 50% of the parents who respond to that survey that said they're not comfortable sending their kids back to school if we go full time. We have 31 staff members that are willing to do remote learning. I think we need to break this down. We have a very clear divide in our community. We have a subset of people who are not going to send their kids back to school. This is the easy problem in my mind to solve. We can establish a remote learning program. We did it last year, very quickly. I'm trying to phrase there. Time to plan, 31 staff members willing to do it. It's a solvable problem. It's something that the community members want. I think we're getting lost in the weeds when we're, discussing the definition of a hybrid model. I think for clarity's sake, we look at what Principal Woody has presented as the AA or AB, whatever. That's the hybrid model. I think, yes, we have a reduced student load in the school with the remote learning option, but I think we're getting lost in the weeds trying to further delve into the definition of hybrid.
First, the 50% that you're talking about, I feel like the question on that survey said, if we get all the kids back into the school, we can't protect them per CDC guidelines. Do you still want your kids to go to school? And 50% said yes. But 50% said no. They don't want their kids to go to school in a school that cannot protect their kids per CDC guidelines. I think if we asked it a little bit differently and said, with modifications, I don't think they're going to be 50%. I think it would be different, as judging from the other responses that we saw.
Andy, this is their question. Go ahead.
So the end goal is to get all the students back into school, then I don't understand why one option isn't remote, the other is, full time in school. I look at one of the surveys and I see spaced out, there weren't really a lot of high marks there. Cloth coverings didn't have a lot of high marks, and then I look at disinfecting and hand washing, and those, yes, must have returned to school pretty much at the top of the chart. So, I guess what I'm getting at is, I want to see a motion for remote, whatever that actually looks like at the end of the day, because I don't want to go back to school. And then for butts in seats, whether that's, 2 days in, 2 days out, or 100%, 5 days a week. That's what I see with the office. So, I guess I would agree with kind of.
Go ahead, Judy.
I don't necessarily want to go with these. I just heard Kristen say she's trying to figure out the feasibility, like the feasibility of doing it. So I guess maybe I could probably make a motion, maybe that we could vote on. I know the one I'm saying, right? So, but I don't know if somebody, like, I guess what I'm looking at, is I would like to extend the time. I would like to actually propose, even though there's a motion on the table, if someone will remove that motion and we go and propose that what we do is that we move the start of school and push it back till at least after Labor Day. I'm thinking, or maybe I was looking at like the 14th, because the amount of planning and organization that it would take in order, if in fact, of Deerfield school providing remote learning to happen, as well as bring everybody back in school socially distanced. If we don't give the staff time to prepare, I saw on the slide that the staff is going to need professional development in order to make that happen. I know other districts are providing 6 full days of paid professional development in order to prepare for all the changes that need to come. I know the numbers sound easy. I know it sounds like, I don't know why there's 3 companies. But I can think of 1,000 reasons why it would be challenging to happen. Because as soon as you start pulling teachers in a small school in order to designate remote learning, you are now taking away the seat time teachers so that you can bring the kids back, get as many kids who want to come back into school, back into school. That's all I'm saying. So I'm laying that out there, you can exactly do it.
So, you want to amend it?
No, it's a table, so we have to go, yes.
All right, so you're moving the question. All right, so, all in favor of providing a remote option to our students for the first half of the 2020-21 school year, when possible, please signify by saying aye. Yes, so we're voting on the when possible. So that we have a new motion we have an amended motion on the floor. Any additional discussion on the amended motion? And you want to take our forms and technology?
Motion that the Deerfield School District will provide remote options for families not returning for the first half of the 2020-2021 school year when possible.
Any additional discussion? All right, all in favor? Okay, so that has passed unanimously, so we will move on. Gigi, it sounds like you want to discuss the start of school, so let's go there.
Okay, I'd like to make a motion that we delay or postpone the start of school until after Labor Day and consider opening school on September 14th.
So we have a motion by Gigi to delay the start of school until September 14th. We have a second. And I will second it for discussion. Gigi, go ahead.
I was looking at the plan and I saw the list at the end of all of the things that need to happen. And that needs to we have to get teachers back in the building in order to kind of organize those things. The building physically itself has to be moved around and taken care of. And I felt like, in terms of like Zach, you mentioned that we can kind of move in a direction, we can set a direction, and then we don't have to be in the weeds. We can work it out. I feel like, given that time will allow the staff and the administration to really give thoughtful plans to how could we provide, could we Deerfield provide remote instruction? And also, what will it look like when we cohort our students if we're talking about sending them into a hybrid model. If we want the remote learning to be as robust as possible in both scenarios, both in the remote learning part and in the full remote learning, in the hybrid model and the other model, that takes time, because what it does is it takes a shift in your thinking about how you're going to deliver that instruction. It might mean teachers are learning how to make videos of themselves and put their classrooms. It could mean a lot of things. So I figured that time might be beneficial, and then the plan that we would have would be more robust.
One question I have, this is for the community's sake as well as mine, but, we're all thinking that day of July 28th or whatever it is, why aren't the teachers going to be doing that now? I just want to be clear for the community that the teachers are off. Exactly, I just want to make that point, and that their first day, as of right now, would be August 24th, and they would have 2 days to prepare their classrooms. And for all of this, I think that 3 weeks might there be 1, 2, 3 weeks might be a bit excessive, but I guess I look to you, Kristen, Ms. Withy, and for your feedback on how much time you think this staff might.
I really appreciate the sentiment, I appreciate you thinking of the staff. I'm just wondering if we might want to take a step back, because typically when we talk about the school calendar, we do talk to the staff about it, and I'm wondering if we want to, maybe that's the perfect amount of time, maybe it's too short. I'm also conscious about what happens to the school calendar to get to the end of the year, and no days are forgiven, and we have to add days, and now we have to pay staff for 2 more weeks. I'm not trying to poke holes in it, I'm just trying to think maybe we should take a step back and answer some questions before we change the calendar.
So, I have notes kind of scribbled in here, and I support pushing the start of school back a little bit. I do think the staff's going to need additional time to prepare and get ready, to get the building ready. I think the 8th, which is the day after Labor Day, would be, we'd be adding another couple, we'd be adding a little over a week. We're pushing back a little over a week. What I would say on that, Gigi, maybe this is the way to reword it, is do we want to discuss that with the staff and then circle back to it next week? Is that a feasible thought?
I think it's feasible, and you guys can help me, because sometimes my mind always the linear logical thoughts, more global. But in my kind of global thinking, it makes a difference in my decision making if people were hardcore set on walking out here tonight with a decision. If I don't, me, it would be like, oh, I'm okay with that decision if there were more time, if people have more time to implement it. But if there were not more time to implement it, especially if we're adding a full remote option to the table, then it would be hard for me to, and personally, it would be hard for me to make that decision. And I know people are trying their decision for so many reasons. Yeah.
Conversely, I'd like to similar motion to one made earlier, but I'm comfortable, addressing the school start date in that motion. So we can have, I don't want to get the school back to the weeks without having more fundamental understanding. And that, I think we're at the same spot, I believe, the same spot where we are today.
So, Jeff, you'd like to amend? All right.
So I would like to make an amendment to your motion that we push the start of school back until September 8th. With resuming A/B style hybrid model for the first 2 weeks. With the intention of resuming full-time in-person schooling for those who want it. Based on board reevaluation of the metrics.
Give a second. Second, just a point of order. I feel like you changed the intent of the motion. That is not going back to the front. That is not changing the intent. So, you want to, you want to,
How about point of describing? Given that we're talking about, I think approximately 4 weeks until school would actually start, I'm in favor of pushing the start of school out, or get some feedback from the teachers on what they think would be appropriate, whether it's 1 week, 2 weeks, or 4 weeks. So that, when we meet next Wednesday on the 5th, we can make a decision, and between now and then, the conversations will have already started to take place around what remote's going to look like for the kids that are AADE and what remote's going to look like for the kids that are Common Sense.
we want to do that question.
Looking back to school.
I would like to have the conversation, but I would like to wait until we can have some feedback from staff.
And, we just suggested you source feedback from staff, anything, either we do it, whatever consensus we need.
And can we make the week that you're gonna talk about hybrids, and then we ask them how much time we need to assume that we're going to provide for hybrid and your bid on cost?
Yeah, so I want to start the school year library. I want clarity, it's not. And whether it's 3 weeks, 2 weeks, 1 month, 5 weeks, I don't know. But I want some level of clarity there so that we have a target. So basically, it's definitely the objective. Okay. And I want the year to know, it would plan to get to this point. But I want that as a goal.
Two staff rooms.
Okay, so what if we, change your motion to say that could be reevaluated in X amount of time based on the metrics that is provided? Because if we pick an arbitrary number, what do we base that on? Okay, everybody's coming back in 3 weeks, and how do we base, like, what do we base that on? And I'm only saying that, I want to be clear that I think it's important that kids are in school, they need to be here, they need to be with their teachers, they need their people, they need each other. So I'm not against that, but I really want to make sure that we do that in the safest way possible. Because I'm sure all of you, this decision, the weight of this decision has been really taking a toll. And, you know, God forbid, if one of your parents passes away because you made the wrong decision here and went home and spread it to your household, I don't know how I feel about that. If I'm not operating on, it's a novel virus, so I know the science is limited, and I know people are fighting about the science. But for me, when we take dates of doing things as opposed to like saying, we can make a metric that we can say, here's when we're going to reevaluate it. We're going to reevaluate it in 2 or 3 weeks and see, has the community spread picked up? Because the 2 things that I heard is you gotta look at the community, you have to look at our community-based transition. Ours are really low right now. I heard a restaurant rating closed because they had a case that was positive. So we look and we see what the medical health data is telling us, and that will help us make a decision as to like, no, we better keep our social distancing model on the high end, or hey, look, the rates of transmission are still flat and low. We haven't had any positive cases in Deerfield, and so we're going to now base our decision on that. I think we can probably maybe reevaluate and look what can we bring more kids back into the building with different, different mitigation, more office.
I get what you're saying completely, and the thoughts cross my mind. What do these kids have a staff member has? How do you deal with that? But we have to look at the realities and not the scary situation that could happen. And the reality is that we've got a community of people that are native through 6 hellish months. Their kids have been stunted academically, and there's not going to be, we're never going to have a crystal clear answer on this. And I know that the desire to weigh up the options and to wait another week and another week is there. But we're representing families that are working full time and their kids are left to make their own breakfast because they're left to make their own lunch. And I look at the dangers that it's a damage that we're doing to our children. And we have the ability in a safe way we have the ability to get our kids back in school with guidance and guidelines and give the family some security. And I look at what that son did, and we have made a complicated decision a million times more complicated because we've ripped it apart, and we have to start doing something as a board, in my opinion, instead of just keep moving it week down the road, week down the road.
I was just going to ask if we're actually already going to make a bunch of.
So we still have a motion on the floor. Which the boards of the board and then do that.
That was around the circuit. Question, so we will discuss it respectively.
see.
Okay, so, yeah, that's fine. And Jeff, I get your point, and it's an important one. But also, I don't want to stop at the idea that we represent just our students and families in this town, right? The way that New Hampshire has not seen an increase and a spike is because we have not, as a whole community, not gotten back together again, unlike many other states in the country. And the spikes that you're seeing in other parts of the country are coming from that. And so I don't want to lose sight that we are all also connected. And so if I look at the whole community, what 75% of the community is not directly connected to the school. They pay taxes, and they help fund our school, and they help educate our kids, but they don't directly, maybe it's 60%, I'm not quite sure what the number is, but it's certainly the bulk of the community is not here in this school. And so decisions that we're making are not just for our parents and our kids. While the most vocal ones are here, and on Facebook they are, and I appreciate hearing all these opinions, it's not everybody. And so that's also something we have to keep in the back of our head. That's it.
I was going to make a motion that the Deerfield School District will provide a hybrid in-building learning option for community members comfortable with returning to DCS for education for the 2020-2021 school year. I motion that the Deerfield School District will provide a hybrid in-building learning option for community members comfortable with returning to DCS for education for the 2020-2021 school year.
You have a second?
I'll second the yes.
Okay, so we have a motion and a second. You need to start.
Sure, so the idea at this point is we don't know if we're going to pursue an AAPB or an ABAB, so we don't really know what that's going to look like, but we know that we want to get people back to school. I personally am for the option of, anybody that wants to come back to school 4 5 days a week, doesn't sound like we can do that based on the numbers we have, but I know that we want students back in the building. So, the school, the administration pursue that.
So is there a council to refer to figuring out what your hybrid and what information to do all the presenter with class before and further discuss it, or we have to use one hybrid model. Could we provide
so not for the duration of the entire school. That's necessary, and withdraw the, or amend my motion to withdraw the issue.
Did you say the motion as presented by the administration?
I left that out because it didn't sound like we committed to AAPB or ABAB. So I just was like, just trying to.
Yes, go.
So your motion is to start with the
Yeah, so I mean, I guess, yes, so maybe I just think we'll start and not necessarily specific for time unless it's necessary.
Only that to begin the year, it would be over.
Motion that the Deerfield School District will provide a hybrid in-building learning option for community members comfortable with returning to DCS for education for the 2020.
I'm going to change that to, I'm going to amend that to say, at the beginning, to say begin with the hybrid model. You know what that is? The beginning of the year, let's begin 2020-2021 with hybrid model.
And it seems like the 4 right now, 4 starting in hybrid model. I think 4 is a month of hybrid model. Is that fair?
I would need a second.
Do we want to do that? So, motion that the Deerfield School District will provide a hybrid in-building learning option for community members comfortable with returning to DCS for education for the beginning of the 2020-21 school year.
To be
Yeah, can you use the mic so that you can raise, please?
So a motion that the Deerfield School District will provide a hybrid in-building learning option for community members comfortable with returning to DCS education for the beginning of the 2020-2021 school year to be reevaluated periodically.
That's what I meant. Okay, so we have an amendment motion, we have a second, Jeff. Do we have any discussion regarding the amendment to the original motion? Seeing none, all in favor of the amendment? Right, so we're looking at correct, right, moving it correct. I still, I'm very lacking the white, so to me, having some iteration is flexible and then change the circumstances. Is a more clear way to present the plan for the future to you. There is fundamentally under hybrid law. And I want to limit that to the extent we can based upon current facts. So we are, I will follow the Deerfield. This government doesn't exist. Very clear, Deerfield possesses.
Well, I would know.
Do we know? Right, based on the information. And if Deerfield stays that way, I want to provide, we know we're going to provide for the students that we want to, the families that want to, something, right? We put that out there. We're going to provide for the families that want to. That's a discussion that we'll need to dive. But for me, I want to provide the families and I want to provide for the staff. And I hear that this is when we're looking to lead the full community inside the building. And I anticipate it will, I anticipate it being the decision that will be made. I think there has to be some level of intent. The objective here is to bring the students back. To the point. Go out to you, Clay.
I was gonna say, I think the plan says that, I mean, that's the ultimate goal. And I'm comfortable if you say, if you want to, like, I'm comfortable with a time limitation on whatever the evaluated 3 week mark. But I'm not comfortable saying, and we'll be all back in the building in 3 weeks. Because to me, that's arbitrary.
I think the difference for me, in the two, right? Effectively, we're not saying the same thing. I think the difference for me is, I want a reason not to go full time. Not a reason, no, sorry, I want a reason not to bring 100% of the back, as opposed to a reason to bring them back. Because with data, the reason to is there are no current cases. And I'm making an unpopular statement. But there are today no cases that we're aware of. And so for me, that is the reason to try to get back, having the community get back together. And I fully support social distancing and mandating masks. There's a whole bunch of like other bullet points that need to be done with how to get there. But to me, unless something says we, I want something that says we can't do it, as opposed to something that says we can't.
Then why bother starting with no? Why are you continuing to go back in?
Because I want to make sure, so, and I can answer that. So for me, it's making sure the kids understand the way that we're going to flow through the building, and the way that this is going to work, and what is, I know the term, normal, not necessarily popular, but this is unfortunately the reality we live in. And this is going to be Until vaccines develop, what education moving forward. And it's not going to be, it's not ideal, it's not pleasant, but there is a certain percentage, there's, I believe a lot of the kids are better off with that in-person instruction, and I don't want to write off part of their education. But I also want to make sure that we're flexible for families that have the health concerns, and that's why I try to separate the two of the application. By saying the intent would be to go for that to the full student body. I think what it does is it gives us a chance for a period of time to monitor a situation as we start to bring the split cohorts in. It allows us to monitor what's happening in other schools and try different approaches, right? And then from there, if we see that it's crashing and failing everywhere around us, we stop and reassess. But if we see it's moving smoothly, and everybody else is moving smoothly, or going in the same directions, we know, okay, we're okay to go. I think it also creates a circumstance where we look at parents and say, we know this is not ideal, we know this is not the situation we want, but we're asking you for 9 days or 10 days, 12 days of flexibility. Give us that to make sure we're not wrong before we bring it back. And that's why we want to start split, so we can make sure we're not wrong.
I fully agree with you, but none of us can say that here. Or after we have these bills, none of us has an MD, none of us we're not qualified to make these decisions on our own. These decisions came to us through our administration, came to us. And from there, came from the state CDC. And the national CS, so these agencies who are the experts, who know what's happening, who's actually reporting this. And I've heard a lot of good first-hand anecdotes here of nurses and first responders. And that's fantastic, and people are doing that. I really appreciate the work. But they're not at the CDC level, they're not at the national level, watching the trends. They are in the hospital, which is, again, highly appreciated. Who are we to decide in 2 weeks that it's okay to go back? I'm not an expert. I'm not going to make that decision on my own. And I don't think that any of us is, but I feel like that's a mistake. So I would be open to some sort of change in the language where we are looking to CDC changes in guidelines. And if the state recommendations change, then maybe we'll change ours. But I like being in line with the CDC and with the answer. Those are the people who are actually spending all their time studying this now. And I would rather defer to them than to make a decision to, based on, I don't know.
I think 2 more things. I mean, the CDC level, absolutely, there's some smart people there, but they're tracking trends on a national level, not here. And, right? And none of those boards said don't send the kids back to school full time. They certainly gave guidelines which we're working on adhering to. But nobody said listen back full time. So we're not making overruling the CDC or the NCCA. They're just as much on their advice from them, about the dead school. So yes, I am in construction, not in deep, but I read ad nauseum. And I'm comfortable with the decision I'm making. Nobody has to be there.
I think the good part for me is I haven't seen anything that said that about eliminating mitigation. So even like a latest thing that CDC put out July 23rd with that, don't let your inability to, do whatever you can to get kids back because there's social and emotional well-being is really, really important. Yet, in the same breath, when they set out their guidelines on the next page, when they laid out their guidelines, they also said, and we recommend that you socially distance and cloth face coverings are one of the number one things that will eliminate spread. So if in fact you decide in 3 weeks, okay, in 2 weeks or in 3 weeks we're all coming back in, then I was trying to figure out like how will we know by that, will we know that we can get everybody who wants to be back in the building socially distance from each other in order to keep them safe?
It sounds like based on what the CDC says, we wouldn't be able to have student, 100% capacity in each room, anything from 3 years. So, I guess I'm just not up on that, right? I want us to be in a position where we're all comfortable going back 100% and people are with that. Like that's what we're talking about. Being able to be remote for the first half of the year is great. So that gives us the first half of the year to prove to the community and those folks that, you know, we're doing things right here. We've got plans in place for if something comes up, you know, we're going to transition everybody remote or whatever. So I guess what we're getting at is I don't know if the amendments, if the motion needs to be amended with language that moves to a hybrid. It just says that we're going to provide in-building learning options. Because similar to the remote, like that's still got to be worked out with what it actually is. So if we're hung up on the hybrid thing, then you know, remove the hybrid, just say we're going to provide in-building learning options, and that sounds like similar to the remote. That one was the first half of the year. So I don't know if you'd be comfortable with the first 2 months of school, first month of school. Are you looking for?
So, yeah, I mean, in my mind, right, is to me, I'll provide, I want to provide also maintenance. I want to provide clarity to the students, I want to provide to the staff, I want to provide to the families. So they can all thrive, barring circumstances change. None of this works if the community doesn't support it. So this fails miserably after 1 week. If we don't have support from the community, we don't be close to the kids. We don't explain to them, hey, you're not going to learn math at school, but you're going to do it because this is what gets you back to school, this is what gets your friends back to school, this is what gets you back into that environment, and we cannot break it. So this is, we have to work for the greater good of that. This is, all of us have to work together to make this happen. But I want to on the short term say, if this works, we need 9 days. We need 9 more days of inconvenience when school starts. And if this works, and we're still at 0, we can define 0 cases, but we can define it as 1 case. We can define it as community transmission. We can define it. I don't even define it. What I'm going to do is, I want to be able to look at somebody and say, we're asking for 9 days of potential inconvenience, 9 days, 3 weeks, right? 3 days before, 9 days, 3 weeks, before. But that part I don't know. I just want to say, if this works, like we're hoping, and we do not see anything changing, there's no evidence that it was changed. Our intent is to have your kids back fully on 8 days, which is, again, flexible, and you may have to amend it, but I would rather provide clarity up front and have to amend away than not provide clarity up front. So I would want people to go back and say to their employers, listen, this is what my council does. I need you to work with me. If everything is good, New Hampshire stays the way it is, Springfield stays the way it is, I can be some level of work more, whatever you want to call it, whatever I'm doing. That's what I want to cover with you. I want you to provide that clarity. More is flexible, more we can change, more we may have to do something different. And that falls in our commercial with the short, since they said they want to evaluate 2 weeks. I'm saying, let's go 2 weeks. Put a little bit more cushion in there. But the evaluation is the intent to come back to all students, which if they have 100-ish, 120 students not in the building, that puts us at 420 kids, that puts a chance, that puts our classroom numbers down a little bit lower, and we, based on the slides you showed us, are going to be hovering around those classroom numbers anyway. So I think it works, the distancing works. You have a chance to get the kids in, you have a chance to learn how they're going to learn in their own classes. Yeah, everything runs slowly with small groups. I mean, with it, to having everybody here. What we do with the targeting. So I'm trying to get, so we have a motion on the floor, we can act on it, amend it, we can discuss here more, names, we rolled out thoughts. So this is the conversation we need to have.
I just would hate to say 3 weeks and then 3 weeks comes and like some number changes by, maybe 0 changes to 2. Like there's a change. And we walked into this motion, so what does that mean? If 0 changes to 2, now, it's how, my problem is not being able to see the future and not knowing which metrics to take. And then here we are 3 weeks away and suddenly something has changed. Maybe it's not that bad. It is bad. But whatever it is, you're going to have to go back in the corner and say, well, things changed, so sorry. I'm back in the same place, can I have 3 more weeks right now? Because my school board just said 3 more weeks. The next time we need it is right.
I think that's a true happens for a lot of them. But I want to be, to me, I want to decide that we have an objective, let's work towards an objective. And we can define what we're looking at up front. And it can be school training, it can be school cases, but that's going to be the first level, the most serious thing we can look at. And we need to, at some point, through the administration, and through that, we call it COVID handbook, we'll have to start defining these things. If you show symptoms, you're quarantined out of the building, you're pivoting to the work, 12-hour remote learning, however it works, your symptoms should be quarantined with you, we can still need to define all that stuff. But I want to start up here with coming back. We're doing it for hybrid for a little while, we're doing split cohorts, however you want. This is our intentions to come back for everybody. We're going to evaluate beforehand, but if everything is working the way it's supposed to work, and Deerfield is still in the same circumstances currently in, everybody's back in, we can watch at the clock, and we adjust if we have to adjust.
So I'm hearing you say you are comfortable bringing kids in the building at the end of week 3, whether it's socially distanced or not.
You're gonna be able to maintain. So we're gonna have to feedback from the staff, right? Like either the kids are gonna take this and they're gonna get it, and they're gonna understand it, and it's gonna be reinforced at home, and it's gonna go, or we get from the staff. So we can't get the kids real in. They're running around the building saying, Mom and Dad said I don't have to wear a mask. And it's a different problem, and we need to address it. But part of that setting up protocols and making it very clear that everybody making it as black and white as possible is in my opinion, this only works if everybody buys into it. If everybody buys into it, we can get the kids back. And we can keep the social distancing thing and spacing thing. Our class sizes aren't huge to begin with. You shake a couple of things here and there, they're about to go to the remote option. Our class sizes, even with 100% in the building, are going to drift into that social distancing room capacity anyway. And then we take the medication so we take those into account. We continue to work within those procedures, and we're not. We have 100 kids out of the building, we never have the whole population back in the building to begin with, where 80% of the population back. So we're already running to reduce building size. We take our precautions, but to me, I want protocol. I think for a lot of people, that gives them something. To be able to go back with employers, to be able to go to their kids, to be able to go to their family, to be able to go to their friends in their little micro bubbles that they're all how we're maintaining our sanity, our social lives and everything else. And so I just want everybody to feel on the same page and know what we're trying to do, get to the same level, achieve the same goal, know what we're working with. If we don't do it, screw it up, we're all going back. Everybody's going to period. But if we do it right, we do it. Yeah.
I think the important thing to remember is that setting a goal gives everybody something to focus on and work for, right? The students, the staff, the families, right? We've got this goal of 2 to 3 weeks. We're not saying it's guaranteed to set in stone. You know, if we see 2 cases and suddenly we're uncomfortable with it because those 2 cases were, you know, we have the right to continue the hybrid AV model. You know, I think goals are, especially as trying these times are, so important to focus on the workforce. In the administration, you know, what they said in your slide, 2 weeks. You know, what I'm hearing from them is they're comfortable with it. You can give it, you can give that spirit still changes. That's how it is. So I would amend that.
Andy, go ahead.
Motion that the Deerfield School District will provide a hybrid in-building learning option for community members comfortable with returning to DCS for education for the beginning of the 2020-2021 school year to be reevaluated periodically. That includes the
Motion.
you want to take a stab at it? Or do you want to?
Take a step.
So, motion that the Deerfield School District will, this is an amendment to,
It's all works, so it's, you know. Okay, what's it say?
So, motion that the Deerfield School District will provide a hybrid in-building learning option for the first 4 weeks of the 2020-2021 school year with the intention of having 100% in-building attendance. After that time, to be reevaluated periodically. Sure. Motion that the Deerfield School District will provide a hybrid in-building learning option for the first 4 weeks of the 2020-2021 school year, with the intention of having 100% in-building attendance after that time, to be reevaluated periodically. Trying to read from the original, moving from previous amendments.
So,
You want to see it yet?
I'm good. I'm going to
Well, I know you have some.
Oh, I just, sorry. You know, I was just questioning 4 weeks instead of 2 weeks that the industry asked for. We have the ability to reevaluate.
So, do we want to motion that it's necessary?
so if that's the, I would say 3 more weeks, 3 weeks. I think 2 more two everything, so. Yes, well, we have a motion, we need a second for discussion, we need a second for discussion. Okay, so now, go ahead.
So we had talked about the administrator had asked for 2, there was discussion about 3, and we know that some other schools are pushing out their start dates, and we want to look at, you know, any adverse implications that might happen from, you know, whatever their plans are for the student population, things of that nature. So I figured if other people are going back to school, then, you know, the 4 weeks gives us an adequate, I guess, period of time to calculate it. That doesn't necessarily have to say 4 weeks is fine.
And support 4, support 3. I just want to have that. It's really also just a lot. Okay.
I think I would say that always the way that at the end we say we evaluated every 2 weeks and thereafter as necessary based on CDC guidelines. And we wanted, what do we evaluate? I'd like to say something, let's say either evidence from the administration or from the CDC. So that's something that so I'm not making a
I was curious if it said a methods of health related, health and knowledge related guidelines. Because there's, I mean, it's always good to have more than one.
So I amended my motion amendment, want to read it.
yes.
So do I agree with all the previous?
No, I think I remember.
So,
What do you want to do? It's easy.
Well, we need to be very review it. You can decide what you're doing. I will make decisions.
for all intents and purposes, I changed the last, basically the map. So I'll just read it. So motion that the Deerfield School District will provide a hybrid in-building learning option for the first 4 weeks of the 2020-2021 school year, with the intention of having 100% in-building attendance after that time, which will be reevaluated weekly based on administration, SAU, CDC, and DSHS guidelines. It's a customer in Texas.
So that's the,
DHHS.
so let's just have a discussion real quick. And we can put that in the motion.
I would propose that we move the concession 100% attendance. So we're all.
Yeah, so you don't even look at it more, so you want to recommend that.
For those who want.
First, full-time instruction. So we're not progressing
Exactly.
fair enough. Everybody on board with that?
We can talk about the whole, bill we can get everybody in, so that's how that's included. But yeah, everybody good.
Any other discussion about the potential motion?
Every other week, we can coincide with the coverage of this one. We have 2 weeks, one of the different things. Sorry.
It's here.
So, we want to give a
Motion that we amended, that we amended the amendments.
How do you just read the motion as it is?
So,
Go.
motion that the Deerfield School District will provide a hybrid in-building learning option for the first 4 weeks of the 2020-2021 school year. In-building, We'll try this. A motion that the Deerfield School District will provide a hybrid in-building learning option for the first 4 weeks of the 2020-2021 school year, which will be reevaluated bi-weekly based on administration, SAU, CDC, and DHHS guidelines. We left it in there and removed the 100%, unless we want it back to it.
So, that's the motion. We have a second on the motion. We have additional discussion on the motion. I was going to ask, can you repeat it one more time?
Motion that the Deerfield School District will provide a hybrid in-building learning option for the first 4 weeks of the 2020-2021 school year, which will be reevaluated bi-weekly based on administration, SAU, CDC, and DHHS guidelines.
Motion, and you have a second. And do we have any additional discussion? Okay. So, all in favor of the motion as written, presented? Aye. Aye. Opposed, if there is none? You got that?
Oh, yeah.
All right, so at this point, we know our initial plans are some sort of remote support to be discussed. And hybrid for 4 weeks and start school. To start school, they will be discussed next week. We can dive into what next week. We'll go now. Okay. Having a general direction will allow our administrative team to start discussing more deeply with staff. Right? Okay. Is it possible to start talking to parents to get feedback on how we have a general course of direction? Attendance, what we're going to be looking at with actual attendance, we can start knowing. Yeah. So now you have two options. You have remote for 4 weeks of, guaranteed 4 weeks of hybrid instruction with the intent to go full-time with accommodations made for facial coverings and social distancing and all these other accommodations. So that's plan A, plan B from one side. So now at this point, those two plans can be presented to families, and the families are now able to say, based on the decisions you've made, my children will be attending DCS in person, or my children will be attending DCS via whatever remote mechanism we have facilitated. I think it's definitely the first half of the year, based upon participation in the environment.
I feel like before parents can answer that question, there's still other bits of information that can be known. For instance, the models that are presented have students in school 3 days out of the 5 days. Versus, so maybe a parent presented that option versus that form of a hybrid versus a home for 5 days, they don't make that choice or not. But I feel like there are other versions of alternative. Like for instance, I feel like it's possible, and sort of put this idea kind of followed up here and there, but it wasn't a presentation. And I don't know how possible it's like the but if you took your 3 classes, let's say 3rd grade, and you had 2 classes that were in school, and then the 3rd class was the hybrid and remote class, I would call that a hybrid learning environment. But now you've got 40 kids who are here 5 days a week, and you've got 20 kids who are 0 days a week. I would still call that hybrid across the school, but each family, each child is looking at a different learning experience. And so a parent who's looking at a hybrid option now would have to learn. So I guess before we took that sort of survey, I don't know again if that's our decision or not. But when we see the data, where a third of the teachers seem like they want to be remote and given choice. I don't know how it works out, and I know that it's going to be 8 kids from this class, 1 kid from that class. But if you took your 66 graders and shuffled the classes around, maybe it's really late for this, but if we then delay the start of school, maybe we've got 5 weeks to do this, could we make new class groupings? 2 groupings coming into school, and those are the kids that are the weakest, or whose parents are frontline, these first responders who can't get home, or both parents work, that situation. We've got 15 or 20 kids at home who are just committed to the remote learning, and we have a teacher committed to the remote learning. Because this other thing that we're hearing here, I don't want to have teachers, or what we were talking about, where you've got 5 kids who opt to be at home. Now a teacher has, let's say, 15 kids they're teaching during the day, and they also have to teach 5 kids in the morning. Now they've got 2 jobs, that's not going to jobs, I'm sure most teachers are not going to do that. So the details of how this, like, we call hybrid, I know we were debating what should we call it hybrid, but here it is. This is what do we call it? So if that's what we're saying, then let's be specific about that in the survey. Okay?
So, to me, that defining what you just talked about is dictated by numbers, right? And so, the numbers start defining, is it genuinely generically 1/3 across the entire student body across the school? It says, I want my kids to receive remote instruction. Is it now that there's potentially more clarity as to what the intent is to look like split? Is it a 60-40, is it 70-30? But I feel like at this point, we need some numbers, and I think honestly, the administration needs to start getting inside for it. So they start figuring out how it can work. Right? So, right, so I think it's a plan. There will be flexibility, students, families may forward in and out of the city and say, you know what, we told you this, but after a bunch of consideration, looking at things, we really ought to do it from A to B, or whatever it may be. But I think the next step, which is, okay, 30,000 feet, here's the direction, right? So now we just try to, everybody going in the same boat, going in the same direction. That's 30,000 feet. Now you go down a little bit lower and say, how do we make it work in our circumstances where we need to start eliminating variables? So if those variables are, we need to know how many students are going to be building per grade level, I think we need to start trying to gather that information. And it may not be 100% accurate, but if it's 95% accurate, then we can look at it and go, okay, yeah, it's a consistent third across every grade level. It may not be, but if it is, if we have staff, and we can make it work, and we can dedicate staff members on parallel instruction, review building instruction, structured remotely, everybody's working in the same direction, great. If we start looking at it going, you know what, we're going to do 90%. People want to be in the building, 10% are saying they're not. Then that remote instruction is going to look very different than it is if we're 70-30 or 60-40. But I think we can start at that point. More concretely than obviously we send out a survey, but to a certain extent, we really need a response. Right? Whether that, we can accomplish what with a survey, and we can follow up with the families that don't respond. Get a phone call from the office to say, hey, we just got a survey, can you please let us know what you think? But I think that's a logical next step for the board. Yeah.
Are we going to allow parents to switch, as we described, where they start off in remote? I think we need consistency. I think we have to allow switch, and we make your decision. The last prayer.
I'm going to go with I don't know.
Okay.
Yeah, I know this is new territory. Everything is to be flexible and open to us in our planning, so I think it's fair to say that, but I'm not having our people online for the one that also is going to go in and
Yep.
that. So I think just asking parents to be true for the most part.
Maybe a follow-up is, in 2 weeks, families can opt to change level for a remote one, and, don't have like a massive influx of all this, maybe there's kind of, hey, when we assess weekly, we want to know if you're planning on coming back. That would be okay to kind of share.
And again, part of this community all working for the greater good is, consider the response to us and the desire. But know that we're planning, our plan is predicated on the result we get back, right? So if it's a 60-40 split, we're going to devise a plan that works with those numbers. And if it's a 70-30, we're going to devise a plan that works with that, however it breaks down. But I also think we need to start addressing the two biggest looming issues now are what's the actual enrollment in the building going to be versus remote. With the structure, array, just need to figure that out. And then transportation is going to be another big problem we need to start looking at. And transportation, how that works, is going to be driven off of, there's 450 kids that are going to be in the building, we know there's 225 of them are going to need transportation. We know that that's the best, while continuing the that may dictate that we need to think outside the box on us. Whether we have a run, whether we split routes, and then we have budgetary impacts that we need to take into consideration. So, well,
I think it has to be with time, kind of sort through all this and come up with the data that it's like. It's really hard to be easy
so the first, next step is going to be where students going to be good enough. We're all on the same page there. Is that something you all think that's good?
Here's everyone does. You can give you more than that. You can say we've got 50% of the population in school. But it's going to be followed up with more problems next time.
Well,
But we'll be.
yeah, let's hope that, people understand the seriousness of what we're trying to work here. And you tell their friends and their neighbors and everything else that this is coming and this is how we need service. So, if we now look over next week, we can start, if you get that back and you want to start spitballing ideas and coming up with thoughts, great. And then we can have a discussion next week. Is there any other items that we need to? Whoa!
I think that as in terms of developing a clear picture, we have resources here at the school. I would like to bring up the other classroom option for facilities for future of our system. And it was something that we came over our last meeting, and it was discussed and proposed, and the board asked for sort of prototype to see what we're talking about here. And the prototype has been built, and it's fantastic. And a lot of community work to do it. And it's both volunteer resources, volunteer time, volunteer sweat. And I'd like to recognize that and maybe a little bit of information. Okay, so here's the information about options for the I think the end result here is that there's a lot of potential, and there's a lot of teacher interest in this. Okay, a lot in terms of utilizing this as a way of expanding the classroom, expanding the footprint, expanding the numbers of kids. I don't know that it will lead us to be able to get more kids on a given day. We're still confined by the CDC guidelines. But to be able to meet the CDC recommendations of more outdoor time, AP recommendations of more outdoor time for everybody, especially kids, this is an option that a lot of schools consider. You also have to look at the system of risk. Right. So this happened as a prototype fairly spontaneously, and we came up in the last meeting to put together. Going forward, I think that here we are to there's space for data reads, there's space for weather data reads, if there's interest. It's very responsive to the teacher. Those proposals and processes being responsive to what teacher will use in the classroom. But to be able to move forward on developing it, on okaying things, there's no, it's sort of the back who makes these decisions. Obviously, the school board has the elected body that makes these decisions, but we don't have to I'm going to propose a motion to create that with create some. That's really small, right? So I move to support expanded learning opportunities at DCS by promoting the development and use of safe outdoor classrooms on school property. Further, to create an empowering outdoor education subcommittee to coordinate and communicate progress with volunteer representation consisting of DCS administration, teachers, parents, and students, and to fund committee with $5,000 from the Inland to be used for professional development around outdoor education and innovations in educational practices by DCS faculty. The subcommittee's decisions are based on prioritizing student and teacher wellness and safety, pursuing competency-based education in the natural environment, and for conserving natural resources and qualities of schools related to property.
Motion by Dave, second by Andy, discussion.
So, as I cited before, the CDC may both promote as a way of meeting the guidelines that they're proposing as much as possible, come to increase ventilation. And even before the pandemic made this a necessity to innovate this way, outdoor education has been a key component of many programs throughout the country around the world. And it's a well grounded, well-researched means of education. I think that, as I mentioned in here, the way that our schools move with competency-based education lends itself to reaching those competencies, whether you're inside or outside. There's a huge amount of flexibility that can be working with competency-based education. And so we would be, in the short term, with these resources, meeting CDC-approved ways of battling the pandemic and preventing its spread in our community. But also in terms of the long term, we would be maybe innovating and branching out and creating some really exciting new learning opportunities for our students. And so I think it's a great opportunity for our students. The fact that teachers are interested in it and feeling proud that they have to go ahead and do this, I think is very exciting for our school.
So the 5,000 from the budget for professional development.
You got a second?
Is that 5,000 going to be straight for professional development or actual brick and mortar?
The construction has largely been funded so far through volunteer donations. This, as it says for professional development, it doesn't say for more. So you can change that.
I guess the question is, is that a targeted amount based on knowing that to give the professional development to take care of it's going to cost us that, or you want to get funds to do that for use as they need it?
That number, I did not do the research on that, what do you cost?
Okay.
I know there are opportunities, and I know that if you're talking to some teachers recently, there are efforts that are just regional sort of top regional so there are options of that. I don't know how much it costs, but I think that innovation, I think that training for the classroom does more resources. It's not a real budget line, using money for that. My intent here is not to also fund building a classroom because there's already. I think that happens to this and so again, with this committee, we could keep track of that. We're talking with Jeff, the funds that they're donating, I think, are with the PTO. There is a building donation funds that the motion is building using it and supporting teachers in expanding their training.
I'm just wondering about the peak you mentioned, just thinking about your budget and are you concerned about your budget? Come out and say that they're worried about responding to your cities, stuff. I'm afraid of facing in this budget, there is opportunity to keep practice. So I'm just wondering how important that money is right now. Do you think that's essential to get started going, or do you think you can access it probably when it where it's happening and kind of reevaluate it?
Yeah, I don't think that's necessary. I think there's already some like I said, the actual physical materials are already in the press. I think that the PTO and others in the community will do a great job of doing that.
at the moment, they want to support it without 5,000, not that they don't support it for 18, and want that to remotely do what it sounds like. But we have a lot of expenses coming. We have $47,000 in support from the state to try to COVID-related expenses, and we're now, we don't have enough for it now. So, that would be, that's my only feeling to just, that we need to reopen the budget as tightly as we can. Your hopes of surviving through this year, and coming out unscathed, and I know that's also returning policies and those are the budgets and things. So, if you're willing to remove the 5,000, you can create a line during the budget season and look to that, and is that a on campus for that plant.
I would suggest it so everything would be exactly the same. And then when we get to the part where it says, in the third line, it says volunteer representation, consisting of teachers, administrators, and teachers, parents, and students, and to promote professional development around our education and innovation. So just cross out, fund the committee with 5,000 for the annual revenue, cross that out, and just put a word promote. Professional development around outdoor education. And then I think the intent of the idea of TV towards it is still there.
So I second the amendment. Additional discussion? Amendment to the motion. All in favor? Additional discussion in regards to the amendment motion. Okay? Yes. So the question is, all in favor? Thank you.
I have two quick things.
Go.
One I know. One is just a point of information or clarification for me. When the surveys go out, because I don't have children in school, do you use one call now or whatever it is, the phone thing?
Yes.
Okay, I figured that. When I saw the number of people that answered on the phone, yeah, I was like, something happened, I just wanted to check in with that. And then, the last thing I wanted to do is I just wanted to get a sense of the board. I have been looking into trying to push to see if we could get some legislation around relaxing, the state minimum standards.
Can we
Oh,
hold
is it
that thought
for
for 10
information?
seconds?
Yeah.
Let's hold it for 10 seconds and hit it. Let's dispose of the motion.
Oh my God, I'm sorry, I forgot that we had a minute that I made.
Corey.
Oh my, I wondered where you were going back around.
I didn't know if the screen was circling or not, that's why I looked.
No.
So, any additional discussion regarding the amended motion on the floor?
Sorry.
All right, seeing none, all in favor of the motion as amended? Aye. Opposed? Got it? Okay. Phoebe?
You were so polite. Stop talking.
Never say that.
Well, you did. So I wanted to get a sense of the board tonight. I have been thinking a lot about this prior to the pandemic. In that when we are working in a competency-based world where we're looking at having evidence to see if students have reached and met competencies, that is incongruent with seat time and days in school. Arbitrary 180 days, arbitrary whatever that 900 and so on hours it is. So I had looked into looking for legislation to kind of change that. And that seems off the table because, until we get acted on by both bodies, it would be probably the end of the school year. So I think that, what I'd like to do is I'd like to draft a letter and send it to, the governor's office, the Department of Education, the Office of School Wellness, and any other body that you think I should send it to. And the reason being is that I feel like it's important that if in fact we have local control on all of these other things, and yet we don't have local control on our calendar and number of days, and I feel like that is, it would be important for us this year to either have that reduce the number of days, or even just dismiss for this year if we're given the professionalism to figure out health-related issues and make these crucial decisions. It seems to me that we should be able to say, you know what, we're going to go 172 because we need those other days to do X, Y, or Z. So I would like to draft a letter saying that a little more eloquently. And I was just wanted to get a sense of the board to see if that would be something that you would be willing to try and not do.
Sure. I for one will certainly. I think with the shifting state here was they want the local girls to make decisions. That's great. But not just to form a very hard decision on asking without making no guidance whatsoever. So for me, I'm all on board. Unless the board else than me.
How do you have anything to say how we're talking about this issue?
No, nothing.
Before this, if it's still even good, they consider, I guess, in May, you think it's likely to not come in?
Well, yeah, I mean, I think under the pandemic, it's all, otherwise it's going through the process. But there's, if you're writing to those people, this is it. The situation where we need a little bit of discretion. I don't know if they can make those, because we got one last year.
And Massachusetts has already done.
Yeah, I think it's.
They've already said we're going from 180 to 170.
And you might want to send it to the school board association too.
Well, that's what I was thinking.
They'll be doing resolutions, doing their meeting, giving her
I was wondering where we could get other surrounding school boards to maybe even sign on.
I support.
All right.
All right, well, we
That's all right.
Great. Two more things. First of all, one is, I don't think we get the transportation, you mentioned it earlier, we don't have any numbers yet. But if it's gonna, do we need to, this is something for next week to think about. Do we need any transportation committee to do like hashing that out, I'm just going to give it to you, they'll help something to think back.
Anderson communicated with them, and they are actually working out different scenarios for each of our districts about what it looks like if we were half time and, half full. I've seen Anna's on it, and I think we have some with data right now, we can still come up with numbers and things to change, but it's close to half. Our family, they're going to be sooner rather than later, is which half and what days, because they're going to have to do stuff.
They're going to be looking at really, there's two phases. We're looking at an AV, right? And we haven't discussed if it's an AV, whatever, right? That doesn't have to be dealt with. We don't have to clear that tonight, right?
So we can go on that for sure. And I think we have transportation needs on everything already.
So
we need someone more.
do you want to do something with
I'll tell Amber that we will, and we will need somebody at school. We are. Thank you.
Yeah, you're up, all right? There you go.
We been talking a lot about the DCS graph, but we still have, the grades 9 to 12 in our district. And so, is there a way we can get an update on the number? Is there a way they can, I know I've heard that there is a presentation tomorrow, is that anything like that?
So, actually, we had a meeting this morning related to superintendents and, these things. So she did mention the forum last night, and there's going to be one more Thursday. So we had some families that were there and spoke, which is great. And she's going to, the thing that I asked her if we could know sooner rather than later is if they do go to hybrid, what their remote day is going to be. So, we were looking at one day, and they were looking at a different day, and, want to communicate on so she said she would reach out to me, so she had a copy.
You know, the presentation they're doing tomorrow? Can you, after the presented, to us when
I think there's I think I saw a draft plan online.
I saw the form, but I don't remember if it was.
I think the high school grades, it's not running through the grades, down middle school, I think the high school presentation was something like 7, 10, and 8 o'clock.
Yeah, and they're split into times, and I'm assuming, I think it was a, so assuming they're going to.
Yeah, there also seemed to be a community, the cable channel.
Yes, they are, yes, yeah.
You, looking ahead, do you feel like, when we can coordinate more, or when we find some conquer, versus the rest of our SAU, and then an awkward situation because we have a lot of SAU people working on this. We have families that can come here.
And we talked about that, I think the SAU task force is more about getting as many, as much brain power as we could find with all different levels of expertise, and then we kind of go off and knew that we had to tweak things for our districts. So that's what we did, we personalized it, we wrote off to, the principals that sharing, like, okay, we started with draft this plan, this is our format, let's steal it, it's great resource sharing. But everybody's doing their own plans. So yes, we do know, everybody else is to get.
And then moving forward, as we start planning more, in developing that COVID handbook with procedures and what we're going to do and whatnot. Does the administration want to tackle that? Does the administration want the board sweep that one? That was everyone approach. Yeah, the operating procedures, the planning, the details.
I think the team is continuing to work on that, and that would be appropriate for some of the first.
So, most certainly, as a meeting here, if there's updates or questions, and we can help fill in blanks and goals in the process, let's move forward. So, like I said, I think as we leave here, we're all going to start, everyone else in mind, we start running again, we start running the questions in years, and I would say let's create an avenue to get questions up to the administration, so if it's reasonable, fairly interesting for the board members to start tracking information, questions about you guys, and some of them may be redundant, but at least we've got some back inside the building, like in here, and then we can try to start clearing stuff off the table again as we progress here, and as we start moving forward. And,
if you, I don't want to get bogged down in all the details, so if you can hold, we might have questions that we can answer next month, so some, and I make the assumption that there's a ton of detail going on in that plan, so if there's, some big topics that you say, something like this, things like that, so if you can log down and you can questions, so it will
and then if there's an item you want to have next week, then you set up a meeting, and to see that prior to the adoption agenda, once the motion for that. So if we can write that, and we can add additional agenda maybe on for next week's agenda, and then
Any other items?
You want your goal setting back on, or you want to look that up a little bit more?
We're sort of thought of the board on that. There's a heavy look at what's going on right now, if you guys want to go for and read, you can play with that, but this took a long time tonight, so I have to wait.
And then the other thing is, certificate is coming, and administration, and certificate we have to open it. And that was the only other agenda item we have.
And now, it's his discussions will be normal. And we'll separate everything else. So, I guess the question for the board for the next meeting is, do you want to dive into that, or do you want to continue addressing and trying to see if we can move further down the COVID-related school reopening wormhole before we start focusing on some of the other stuff?
I think we can continue to focus on COVID, getting school in this scenario, and it's probably the.
It may change anyway, because of that,
I was just respecting your request to have a very office.
Touche. All right, so we can give Mr. Lottie his room from there.
Okay.
And allow him to spend with his family. And what's next week? We'll continue to focus on the current matter at hand, which is reading through the. Okay. Anything else?
yeah, one last thing was, I sort of assumed, but maybe it's not a safe assumption, that we established this, I was kind of made.
I'm not making it. Second. All in favor? All right, we have another opportunity for citizens' comments. Hopefully, we have helped answer some questions for some citizens. We've probably created some questions for some citizens. But please feel free to approach, as before, please tell us who you are or what you know where you're from.
Kevin Burwell, McCarran Road. Great reading tonight, thank you. You might have trouble with phone numbers because best I could follow along, I'm not really sure I understand what the hybrid is. There's a couple of models that and unselected, and the remote, right, full remote is not really well defined. So parents might struggle trying to figure that out. So the more definition you put that whole thing into it. The outdoor classroom concept is a breath of fresh air. It's innovative and it's different. And one of the biggest complaints public schools get is that they're stale, they're stuck. They only do what they did. That's all they can do. And the outdoor classroom is a different concept. And you have to change the mindsets and you have to do things differently. But it certainly can be done. We built a playground on donations and volunteer work. We built a school. Right? I gave money, I gave time, I gave labor. I didn't want to do it. The school should have paid it. Right? The school district should have paid the school's playground. This space should be funded by the school. I don't mind volunteering, I don't mind donating, but it should be paid for out of the budget. We're in a default year, so what's the dollar difference between the default budget that passed and the proposed budget that failed? Okay? It's a small one. You have a surplus of, what, $400,000 this year, which is typical. And I would contend that if you go look at surpluses from default years and proposed budget years, whichever one happened to pass, is you guys get your proposed budget a little more than 50% of the time, probably 2/3. The surpluses aren't much bigger. What percent of the budget is already spent? Right? The largest budget items in the budget are contractual items that are locked for the year. So, to be worried about unforeseen expenses, it would be hard to imagine that the nominal amount of money that would be required to do that and do that correctly would come anywhere near So you should consider paying for that. Which school board member is the rep that goes to Concord High? Well, there's a school board member that's charged for that. I don't know who it is. But that person should be following very closely what's going on in Concord in general, in Concord High too. I hear a lot of questions about what's going on in Concord, not just since COVID, but for years past. And whoever the rep is that's in charge of Concord should really be on top of that and should be bringing Deerfield's message. The reason we have a voice there is to bring Deerfield's voice, right? Is we send kids there. The other out-of-the-box thing you could consider, and I know this is, you want to talk about scary stuff, this is scary. As a board, you could probably consider a tuition option to make some amount of money available to families that may want to choose a different option. It certainly is legal. Plenty of districts in New Hampshire do it and have been doing it for a long time. And so if you really want to give options to families to best meet the needs of students, some sort of tuition scheme might be well worth the effort. Anyway, great meeting. You did great work. Thank you for starting to meet with me. I greatly appreciate it. I know a lot of people.
Do we have any additional?
My name is Lindsay Rose from Meeting House Hill Road. I want to thank you for speaking today. This is a better time. I am a stroke care pharmacist at the local area hospital in ICU. And I have cared for ICU ventilated patients that have not survived COVID. I've cared for ICU ventilated patients that have survived COVID. I've also seen the patients that have had very mild illness. So I think I can relate better to most grave disease that this disease with potential families. I also know that it's not going away. You look at the therapeutics, you look at the vaccine. Yes, it's on the horizon. If it is made available in record time, we're not going to have enough produced to effectively inoculate the patient population for our society. So I feel like we have to integrate that into all of the decisions that we make. It's our new life that we have to live in. And every day I make decisions that are risk versus benefit in my profession. Here we're making a risk versus benefit decision for our children. And I feel like it's primarily risk versus benefit to bring them into the school and the risk associated with COVID. I think we need to think of the risk versus benefit for leaving them at home and what risk would that pose for our children. I'm really pleased with the administration's decision for brainstorming a hybrid model and the ability to test that in the first couple of weeks of school. But what I was disappointed about is hearing the potential delay of the start date. I feel like right now is our window of opportunity to get our children back into the school system. Well, our adult case burden is relatively low in the state of New Hampshire. And the longer we wait, that case burden is going to change. So I personally feel that come the flu season months, we will not be in school. We will be 100% remote, not by choice, because our state has decided that for us. So our window of opportunity is now to get them in, get them that English and social development exposure that they need. And then be mindful that we might have to change course down the road. One last statement that promise I'll come in. And that is throughout all my time at the hospital the last 6 months, we made decisions on Monday morning at 11, and it changed at noon. We made decisions constantly. We have to become familiar with the unfamiliarity. And I think that you guys tonight discussed a lot of options and thinking about what 4 weeks from now looks like, what 6 weeks from now looks like. But the reality is the decisions made tonight may be very different next week or next month. And as a parent, I would say that today, I would feel comfortable sending my child to school full time. But next week, I might not have that same news. So I think your survey results, we're trying to get the information, but the reality is that the time when those kids need to come to school, they may not have that same response. So I just wanted to please consider not delaying that start of school. We are one of the very few that start in August, so I think that works to our advantage. Once kids go back to school, if there's going to be an outbreak, it's going to be seen about 2 weeks later. So if we delay to September, everybody in our surrounding towns are doing the same thing. So if we start in August, we get 2 weeks of school before we have to worry about the case for other towns increasing, and we
those towns crossing into your spreading to us. So just, please think of that as an issue. Thank you.
Additional comments?
Wolfram, Third Street. The only thing I was a little unclear about was the whole time frame of the hybrid model, beginning with 2 weeks, 3 weeks, 4 weeks. Again, things will be changing enough. I think that, going with administration for 2 weeks is probably the best idea to do that. And there's no reason why we can't just reevaluate that every 2 weeks and push it out to give ourselves more options as possible. So that was the only one. And I didn't see any reason for actually pushing it out to 3 to 4 weeks. Because it was from the administration. Just one of the things I was unclear about. So I'd like to see every 2 weeks, and then again, maybe even shorten up the time and we fit up different options.
I agree with you. Based on my commentary and correspondence to you guys, I don't think it's a surprise, and I'm definitely much more comfortable with the remote side. With that said, I still want to be an advocate for safety for the families that do go to school. And based off of tonight's meeting, it seems like the focus is safety. But from an observational point of view, there's costs are concerned. And I'll give you one, the microphone. So we're in a room here shared with 6 to 7 people at some point. And we're using a shared microphone where this is a respiratory contagion, where the reason for the mask is for particulates that you're expelling. And then you have individuals come up here without masks, then with a mask, and without masks, and there's no sanitation whatsoever. So we're going to take a step to put the kids in school and say, hey, we can't have a shared communal marker. Well, let's go ahead and breathe in front of this microphone and talk this out. So just from a safety point of view, there's certain things that just don't make sense to me as far as how we're approaching it when the focus is supposed to be safety. PPE. We've had a couple of healthcare workers talk about PPE and the fact that they've been introduced to COVID without any effect. And I think part of that is based off of the fact that they are taught during their education to make sure that they're hygienic during that interaction with the patient, to make sure that they're using the proper gear in the proper way. These are not chin straps. They're not optional in a healthcare setting. And there's also enforcement mechanisms. So, for example, tonight at one point, 10% of the room had no mask on. And so the mandate for school is a cloth face mask required. But what's the enforcement mechanism? If someone decides not to do it, are we just going to turn the other way like we did tonight? Because this is a conversation about safety. And no one addressed the fact that masks should not be optional. And my understanding of the publication of the scenario is that when there's visitors to school, they're supposed to wear masks. So to see people without a mask earlier tonight was honestly a little bit surprising. I also want to make sure we're not conflating childcare and child education. Multiple times throughout the school board meetings, I've heard parents talk about, what am I going to do with my children when I go to school because both parties work? And I feel whoever that may be. But in a hypothetical situation where they're pondering if they're going to send their kid to school before a decision's even made, what does the board think is going to happen when their kid has a runny nose and they still have those same shifts? If they don't have childcare now, they're not going to have childcare in the future. And so what that's going to mean is they're going to send them to school. And based on your literature, you're going to do a temperature check where they're going to be sent to the nurse. And then the cohort, potentially, is going to have to be quarantined for a 14-day period. And that's going to be 40, 60 individuals. There's a lot of figures that we're kind of trying to determine. So I can't put an actual number on it. But when these kids go to school, because the parents are both working, and then we have to make a decision what do we do with them, that's going to impact the cohort. And then also contact tracing is going to come into play. At what point do you make a decision that this person interacted with this child either stays or doesn't? Remote. People said remote learning is difficult. I don't disagree with that. And I think what a lot of people found out is that teachers have very tough jobs. So, salute you guys. With that said, I think that remote learning was difficult because you guys pivoted in about 72 hours. You may have had a little more lead time, but it's quick. And I think for the time you had, you did a very admirable job. And my concern is whatever decision is made, and I think, like I said, we may be going back over to remote learning on the flu season, that we're squandering our time to make remote learning more viable as an option because we want to make it a last resort. I'm not saying it has to be the first resort, I'm advocating of options, but I think this is the time where we plan for how remote learning would work. So if we do have to make that decision, the next time we have this conversation, which is hopefully never, the responses are, hey, that actually worked very, very well. And then me personally, this is the question I have. There's a lot of conversation right now in the Senate about indemnification of the Appeals Act. And so schools, for example, would not be held liable for any sort of coded cost, either through a teacher and or a parent, because of the insurance that someone may have. There's costs associated with illness. So if the board is going to make a decision to say, hey, let's bring the kids back to school, will the board also waive the right to indemnification so that liability can be transferred over, either from a teacher or a household point of view, if there's associated costs? Last piece is someone was bringing up numbers: 6,500 cases, 400 deaths, 600 hospitalizations. If that was constant, keep in mind, guys, that doesn't seem like a lot in relation to New Hampshire. That's a 4% mortality rate and 11% hospitalization rate based on those that get COVID. Now, if that goes constant at 1.3 million people, that's a 0.5%. You can anticipate at least 3 positive cases. Now, from there, you look at the contagion rate and factor it in, those 3 cases aren't going to remain the same. But even if they are, those 3 cases are going to cause cohorts to have to go home. And once again, if remote learning is nothing more than an after effect or a conversation that's just, worst case scenario, we're going to be in a situation where it's not as liable as it should be. So, we have options. If you want to send your kid to school, God bless. I want to make sure we have options as a community, and I don't want to tie the fact that the preference of a parent, either because of educational concerns or childcare concerns, is going to trump just fly. And we need to prepare for the fact that this may not work as smoothly as we want. Thank you.
Any additional citizens' comments? All right, seeing none, we'll entertain a motion to adjourn. So, second. All right. Moved by me, second by Eugene, all in favor of adjournment, 1:39. Yeah. Thank you, everybody.